what is it that I want, you need to be very, very careful about what the process is in order to get the outcome that you want. Because if you want the outcome, but you're not prepared to live the life needed to get it, you're just asking for disappointment.
Yeah, well said.
My friend talks about Call of Duty versus war. And he talks, you think about, this is what going on holiday to a place is, and this is what having to live there is like. You can go to somewhere and you go, it was lovely for a week.
We were in the Congo.
Yeah, it was so nice. But you go, what's it like if you can't leave? It's literally the difference between going camping or being homeless, right? One is an imposition and the other one is a choice. And I think that more young kids need to realize what the reality of being an influencer is like. It's not just going to the Seychelles and uploading a selfie or getting, I don't know what they do, like Play-Doh, fucking jelly, new video games. That's not what it's like. Look at the Twitch streamers. Look at most of the Twitch streamers. They are like the fucking grunts of the content creation. They are factories of content, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, just fucking stream of consciousness. Someone puts something in the chat and you go, oh, well, let's watch this thing, let's watch that thing. Like, it's not, if you do not want the life that you need to get in order to get the outcome that you're looking for, you need to be very, very careful about it. Because the reality is war. It's not Call of Duty. It's the same thing with being in a band. It's like, I love the idea of traveling the world and playing to these big crowds and doing all the rest of it. It's like, okay, you're going to have to live in a van with 4 other sweaty dudes for like half a decade first.
If you're lucky.
And that's if you've managed to break through.
Yeah.
You're going to have to spend so long, a decade learning to play guitar. You're going to have to write songs that never see the day of light. You're going to have to do all of this stuff. And you have no idea if it's going to work. There's this, I think about the gap from where people are in a place that they don't want to be until they get to a place that they do. And I think of it like a lonely chapter. So everybody that has got from a place where they don't want to be to one where they are, there's a point where they're so different that they can't resonate with their old set of friends.
Right.
But they're not yet sufficiently developed that they've created their new set of friends. And there's this temptation to go back to the old patterns, the old ways of thinking. And I did this live show in London last year, my first big headline show at the Eventim Apollo in London. It was pretty cool. And this idea, I think, was one that really resonated with a lot of people because everybody's trying to grow. And there is an incentive for you to stay in the same place because not that many people grow. Most people don't change. They make little changes. They'll cut their hair or they'll lose 5 pounds or, they'll switch from one company to another. But how many people do you know that have lost 50 pounds or moved to a different country or have genuinely changed the way that they see the world?
It's pretty rare.
It's not that common. And we are such mimetic creatures. We're so shaped by the people around us that we can't help but be tempted. You're going to have to do something. If you want to go from where you are to where you want to be, you're going to have to do something that makes you more different, more weird, more easy to be mocked, especially if you come from a country like the UK, where I'm from. Being different is not particularly celebrated in that way. It's the sort of thing that's quite easily mocked. There's a big culture of piss-taking. And if you start, what are you doing? What are you talking to people on the internet for? It's fucking weird. Like, that's stupid. That's not going to work. Why are you going to do that? So if you don't have that level of enthusiasm, there is no support around you to tell you that the thing that you're trying to do, the taking up the martial art, why are you training this taekwondo bullshit? Like, fucking 6 nights a week. Why are you coaching all of these mums and all of these like old guys on how to do Tai Chi or whatever? Why are you doing that? Well, because maybe I'm sort of pulled to it and there is this temptation to go back to your old ways of thinking. Go back to the road that you already know how it's going to end. And I get the sense that this is not a bug, it is a feature. It's a part of moving from a place that you do not want to be to one that you do. And for the most part, you actually need to live through this lonely chapter. And you look at it and you go, well, the fucking Rocky montage was 3.5 minutes. For me, it's been 5 years. Where's the championship ring? You know what I mean? I haven't won the fight. Where's Apollo Creed? None of this stuff's happened. The thing that I wish more stories talked about, if you watch it in the movies, yeah, sure, there's ups and downs in the journey of the athlete that's going to change his life around and get the girl. But his self-belief never wavers, right? He makes the decision, and it's one straight shot, typically. And there'll be some challenges, but he'll get there. His self-belief never wavers. I don't think that that's what the experience of doing personal growth is like at all. In my experience, you're just swimming in uncertainty and fear and a lack of belief that it's even going to happen. You don't even have the promise of glory on the other side of it. I don't even know if this is going to be worth it. And I'm fucking doing Sam Harris's waking up meditation app, and I'm journaling on a morning, I'm going to the gym. Why am I eating meat and fruit? Does this even work? Like, you know, you're doing all of this stuff, scrabbling like a guy in a fucking well, trying to find a handhold.
And if you don't have a good community of people that are also doing that, you're on your own. Yeah.
And this is I think most people's experience, because if most people don't change, you are going to be an outlier if you're somebody who does change. I think about personal growth kind of like a rocket ship taking off. And as you take off, you've got a particular velocity that you're moving at. And what you want is to find other people moving at the same velocity as you. But the quicker that you move, the fewer people are going to be like you, right? So some people will be ahead of you, and you're in this lonely chapter, and then you catch up to them. And then, oh no. And this isn't, you know, some comment on people that work on themselves are like morally better or worse than anybody else, but it's just a stark sort of fact about you talk to people and you resonate with people that are at the same level of life as you are. And that kind of makes sense. You have things to discuss. You're encountering the same sorts of challenges, whether it's in terms of your self-worth or your wealth or your relationship status or all of these things. Birds of a feather, right? And, you know, one of the, I guess, difficult realizations of people who want to change their life is that if you do it well, you might have to go through a period where you let go of all of your friends. But the really bad realization is if you do it really well, you might have to do that multiple times throughout your life. You find a group of people, finally, I've landed after, that period where I was on my own and I didn't really understand. Oh, fuck, I'm still going. I now need, you mean I got to do it again? I've got to do it again. I just thought that I'd found my group, and I've got to do it again. This lonely chapter thing is, it's a big deal, and I think that it explains why so few people make big changes. Because the temptation is always going to be to just go back to what's normal, go back to what I know. And it's why, you know, America, for all that it's a horrible cis hetero patriarchal superstructure that's misogynistically keeping everybody down, it's an enthusiastic and sort of excitable country. And you guys have kind of got permanent first line cocaine energy about everything. And for me, it seems to be a real infusing environment. It encourages me to do things, helps me to take risks. It's either that or get kicked in the head a lot. And I just love it. I love the fact that it makes me feel confident in doing difficult things. And I wish that more people had that community around them. I think largely Reddit is just a website filled with people who couldn't find other people to talk about their niche in their hometown. Like this particular
there's a lot of that,
Warhammer 40k version or whatever. But yeah, it's difficult. And when you get to the stage where you're faced with some personal growth decision, you're always going to have to make this value exchange of, do I want to move forward on my own, or do I want to go back with my friends?
That's a good point, man. Chris, always great to talk to you, brother. Really appreciate your insight. You're a very brilliant guy, and you're fun to talk to.
I appreciate you too, man.
Thanks for having the courage to put all your thoughts out there, and I love what you do. I love your show.
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
You just said something that's like very important. You can't be dogmatic when you're talking about vaccines or about anything.
Yes, it is good to keep an open mind, isn't it? And be flexible and look at a 360-degree view of things rather than tunnel vision and what you're indoctrinated into, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially if you know that indoctrination has been on purpose and profitable. And, you know, one of the great things about your book is, first of all, your book's called Dissolving Illusions. I know I've talked about it on the podcast a bunch of times, but you also highlight a lot of things that we know are beneficial that somehow or another get lumped into nonsense, like even cinnamon. Like,
Yeah. cinnamon is a powerful herb, actually, and it's known to be helpful in glucose handling. There's a lot of diabetics taking it in capsule form now. I noticed at the end of my nephrology career that a lot of my own patients were taking cinnamon capsules, but it also has a lot of vitamin C in it, and I think that was probably one of the keys. A lot of those old remedies that we wrote about, the magic in them probably was the vitamin C in them.
I dismissed all that stuff as total nonsense. I was like, oh, that's hippie nonsense, like echinacea, like get out of here. It's hippie nonsense. Garlic, come on, get out of here. But then the more I've read things, especially like garlic is incredible for staph infection for some reason.
It is, and it doesn't develop drug resistance like a lot of the drugs that are engineered for it. Yeah, the hippies seem to have got it right, I think.
Well, it just, that whole idea of natural remedies is so just universally dismissed by non-silly people. You know, when you say natural remedies, that's great. If you have a heart attack, go to a doctor, stupid. You know, that's generally people's appeal to authority.
Right.
But the doctors should be recommending those things too. Like they're good too. Like vitamin D, super important. You know, vitamin A, super important. And one of the things that you talked about in the book is that I think this was really important when you're talking about the measles vaccine. You were saying that either if you get an infection with measles, just a natural infection, or if you get the vaccine, you're still going to get depleted of vitamin A. Like if you get vaccinated for the measles, you should be taking vitamin A as well. Your body's going to get depleted just by getting that shot. They don't tell you that.
No, they don't tell you anything. Just Tylenol, which actually makes the vaccine not work as well, in addition to causing all kinds of immunological disturbances at the time that you're supposed to be upregulating your immune system against this dreaded disease. Yeah, but one of the things about the recommended by the white coats and the authorities is that the public believes that so many drugs and remedies are standardized that the conventional medical system gives out. And when you go to actually look at them, and this includes vaccines, even though they're standardized, meaning that the manufacturers are told what the regulations should be in terms of production, when people go and look at them, they find it's anything but standardized. Very variable, which is why we see such variability in the results when people receive them. That's only one reason why there's so much variability.
And do you think it's the immunity to any legal consequences that has allowed them to sort of operate like this?
Well, we certainly saw an explosion of their creativity since 1986. So, actually in 1986, you're referring to the National Child Vaccine Injury Act that was passed in 1986. But before 1986, we had 1976, which was the swine flu vaccine fiasco. And that was a situation where there was so much injury that the vaccine-producing companies were no longer able to get insurance. And so they went to the government and they said, we need you to indemnify us, and they did. And so the government absorbed all the lawsuit cases that happened as a result of the Guillain-Barré that happened from then. And so that kind of set a precedent for 1986. So back then, vaccines were just kind of, pieces of microbe or maybe a live attenuated virus. And then they would put the background of all kinds of horrid things inside of it and tell you it was just a clear, beautiful, pure solution. But that's beside the point. So then 1986 comes along, and because there's so many lawsuits happening because of the diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus vaccine, that again, the vaccine companies couldn't continue to go on the way they were because they were being sued so much. So then this horrible act was passed, which to some people seemed like a good idea. And this is always how it goes, is we're going to make you this promise. Yes, we're going to cover all the lawsuits now out of taxes, but it's going to be okay because we're going to pay out these lawsuits and you're going to be fine. If your kid takes one for the team, you're going to be okay. And what happens is after they get their foot in the door, they narrow down the they basically have a kangaroo court that decides if you're eligible. And so the qualification tables got narrowed down because in the beginning they were paying out so much of this. So not only did it make the vaccine companies very, very wealthy and indemnified, but as you alluded to just a minute ago, the creativity of the vaccine companies expanded. So after that, they could add different, what we call adjuvants, things that stimulate the immune system so the vaccine works better. That's why we're able to be in a messenger RNA vaccine situation today, which that wouldn't have happened if it weren't for this indemnification that You know, the vaccine trials have always been a bit of a joke, but they're even more of a joke today than they were in the beginning. I mean, we've never seen a vaccinated, unvaccinated study that is accepted by the powers that be as, you know, good enough. The vaccinated, unvaccinated studies that they have, they use another vaccine for. You probably know that. So if you're testing a measles vaccine, you could test it against a diphtheria vaccine, or a flu shot vaccine is tested against a hepatitis A vaccine. There's no saline placebo because the few studies that exist with saline placebos show how bad the vaccine actually is and how it makes you not only not respond to the disease when it comes around, but more susceptible to it in many cases.
Have there been any instances where vaccines have been helpful?
Question of the century, isn't it? Okay, now we have to back up a minute because I had that same question and I had to go dig deep to all the questions you have in your head right now. I had them too at one point. So here I am, a medical doctor working in the field, believing in pretty much everything I was told, giving hundreds, if not thousands, of vaccines out to my patients, hepatitis B vaccines in particular, flu shots for sure. I was a nephrologist, kidney specialist, in dialysis, etc. And initially, you know, we all kind of have an aversion to needles. I think it's a natural human aversion. So when we're kids, no one's going, oh, I want to go get my vaccine. We're like, you know, okay, fine, sore arm, you get over it. Most of us were lucky enough to get over it. So by the time the first instance of a problem occurred in front of my eyes, I was already a fully seasoned professor of medicine, you know, working in a tertiary care medical center, okay? And so it's been a bit of a process because for me it was the influenza vaccines in 2008, 2009 that showed me without a doubt that vaccines can and do cause kidney failure and put people on dialysis. That does happen. It can cause hypertension. So we're not told to take a vaccine history in medical school. We're not told to even look there. It's not even part of, especially in adults. But when I did start looking there, I started to see more and more associations, let's just put it that way. And so first I had to go down the flu vaccine bunny trail. And every time I went down that flu vaccine bunny trail, guess what I was asked? What about polio?
Right.
So I thought, all right, even though this has absolutely zero to do with polio because I'm watching people crap out in front of me after influenza vaccines, let's see about polio. Because I knew very little about polio, just like most people walking around out there do, that, you know, was invented by this guy named Jonas Salk and saved humanity. We don't see these little crippled kids anymore. We don't have iron lungs anymore. Yay. Well, I would have to say that the polio bunny trail was the darkest one of all. And so after polio then became smallpox, and I thought, you know, we still have people walking the earth that have experienced polio years. So I kind of like to stick to polio because most of the smallpox, you know, people that would have been familiar with it are off the planet. But there's still some doctors around that'll talk about smallpox. There's a guy named Thomas Mack, who's probably close to 90, who was kind of ground zero in the 1940s and knows a lot about it and still says we shouldn't be vaccinated for smallpox today. So then there was that, and then everyone and their dog was talking about autism, and I didn't really want to have anything to do with autism because I was an adult doctor.
I think we should
Adults.
break down step by step, like
Yeah.
what about polio?
Yeah.
Everything starts with good health. That's why AG1 is a great addition to any morning routine and why I've partnered with them for so long. One scoop, once a day, simple, research-backed, and designed to support your whole body health. And it actually tastes great. You can forget juggling multiple pills and supplements. AG1 is a more in-one solution that combines a multivitamin, superior B complex, a blend of superfoods, and more. And more importantly, AG1 prioritizes using nutrients that are already in their bioactive form so your body can use them easily. Just mix it with cold water and you're set. No hassle, no guesswork. It's never too late to create a new healthy habit for 2025. So try AG1 for yourself. And right now, AG1 is offering new customers a free $76 gift when you subscribe. You'll get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs in your first box. So make sure you check out drinkag1.com/Joe Rogan. That's drinkag1.com/Joe Rogan. Check it out. Because you said polio. Once we've breached that, because that's the big one.
Yeah.
Right, this is the one that everybody points to. We don't have
Yeah.
crippled kids.
Yeah.
When you look at the historical timeline of polio, what do you think caused it to go, to essentially not be a problem anymore.
Okay.
You don't think vaccinations had anything to do with that?
Well, I also, it's not what I think, because that's the thing. Like, look, when I got
Right.
into this,
I'm
I
saying it the
didn't
wrong
say,
way.
oh, I want to argue that vaccines are great. I said, look, I don't care. I didn't have skin in the game. I didn't have vaccine-injured kids. I couldn't have cared less about it, essentially, except that it was something in front of me and it didn't make sense. So I thought, wherever the truth falls, that's what I'm going to talk about. So what I say is that what facts line up to show you is that polio is still here. Polio is still alive and well. Polio is called different things today, whereas back in the 1940s, 1950s, the criteria for diagnosing polio were completely different to the year that the vaccine was introduced. The playing field, the goalpost, everything was changed, so that despite the fact that there was more paralytic polio in the years after that vaccine was introduced, they were able to show a complete cascading drop of paralytic polio simply because of the way they changed the definitions of what polio is and what could cause it. And they started testing for the virus, where before they would never test for the virus. And when they started testing for the virus later, what they would find that people had Guillain-Barré syndrome, they didn't have virus, or they had Coxsackie virus or echovirus, or they were lead poisoned or mercury poisoned, which was the mercury and lead were the leading treatments of the day, including bloodletting. They were telling people to take your cigarette and put a little bit of arsenic in there. It's good for your lungs. Yeah, they were literally blowing smoke up people's butts. Like that's where the term comes from, because if you want
to be in, because most of the time, the level of scrutiny that you're under and the level of security threat that's likely is it goes in line with status, fame, and that also goes in line with maybe some resources too.
Right.
So as people get more likely to be a target, they're also more able to perhaps be able to protect themselves with living in a nicer house, gated
Security,
community,
like
having,
Elon.
having security and stuff like that. But this is one of those weird situations where your knowledge, your particular insight, makes you so uniquely vulnerable or such a heavy target, but it hasn't come with the concordant increase in status and resources that would allow you to be able to actually protect yourself.
Right.
And this is, I guess, the crisis of a whistleblower.
Yes, whistleblower and investigative journalists. Yeah, I mean, this is why Julian Assange spent so much time in jail.
I was just about to bring up Ross Ulbricht.
Yes.
Have you guys must have tried to reach out to
Yeah,
him.
we reached out, but he doesn't really want to talk to anybody right now, which is totally understandable. He's got an open invitation. If he ever just says, okay, I'd like to talk, whenever. Yeah, I'd love to sit down and talk to him. I'd love to find the real story, because the narrative and the documentary, the docudrama that was made about the Silk Road and what he did, I'd like to know how much of that is bullshit, because I think a lot of it probably was. I think they were trying to set him up, for sure, and I think there's probably some things that he was accused of that aren't accurate. I'd like to know.
Isn't it funny that we always think about conspiracy theories, all of this stuff as always being in the past, and that when something is unfolding right now, I wonder how much stuff is being ignored by the media but will be studied by historians.
I wonder what would be.
That's one of my friend's favorite questions to ask. What is being ignored by the media but will be studied by historians? I certainly think that smartphone use will be one of those. There was that 5 deathbed regrets of the dying. I wish I'd kept in touch with my friends. I wish I hadn't worked so much. I wish I'd allowed myself to be happy. I wish I'd lived the life I wanted and not the life that other people had for me, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I would bet everything that I'm worth that within the next couple of decades, I wish I'd spent less time on my phone.
Yeah.
Would be one of those.
No doubt.
100%.
Well, your time is so valuable. And how do you have 5 extra hours a day? Well, look at your screen time. It'll save 5 hours.
We were talking about this before we got started, that you have the same number of hours that somebody did 100 years ago. But the average amount of time that Americans spend on screens is 8 hours at the moment. The average time that they eight on screens, all screens. The average time they spend asleep is 6.5. So people are sleeping for 1.5 hours less than they spent their time on their phone.
And what are you getting out of it?
Well,
nothing
look,
tangible.
It's so
That's what's
hard.
crazy.
It's so hard. It's so addicting. It's designed to be addicting. I mean, you've had Tristan Harris on here. The way, the variable schedule reward that tempts you, that keeps you there. You don't know what's going to happen. This is so interesting.
Yeah.
I had the guy who wrote Stuart Russell, he wrote the original AI textbook, translated into 70 languages around the world. He taught me this really interesting thing about how the algorithms work. So we know the job of the algorithm is to predict what you want to click on, right? So what it wants to do is get better at working out what Joe likes on his YouTube feed or on his Instagram feed or whatever. There's actually two ways that it can become more accurate at being able to predict what you're going to click on. The first one is to be better at providing you with things that you'll select. The second one is nudging your preferences so that you are more easy to predict. Because if you just give something the optimizing function of cause Joe to click on a thing and stick about with like click through and watch time, if you get it to do that, it'll just find any route. It's not bounded by, and you must make sure that it's his existing preferences, you can't change his preferences, but this is one of the reasons I think why polarization has increased. Not just that edge cases get used, it pushes people further apart, they get put off into their silos, echo chambers, recursive stuff, blah, blah, blah. I think a big part of it is just the algorithms find it easier to be able to predict you, which gives them an incentive. Now, it's not like a conscious incentive,
Right.
but it gives you this incentive to be pushed out to the sides. And there's this worry about, I learned about this idea called knowingness. So polarization, everyone thinks it's a big deal, and I think it is, it's a big problem, but knowingness is like an uncurious intellectual insulation. So people believe that they know the answer to the question before the question has even been asked. I know what the outcome is. I know what the answer is before you've even asked me the question. And what's interesting about this epidemic of knowingness we have at the moment is if the problem is poor information, you can fix it typically with better information. I will give you a better quality of information. But if the problem is knowingness, you are insulated from ever updating your beliefs because no amount of existing new information is going to actually help you. There's this really cool quote that said, most people think that they are thinking when all they are doing is rearranging their prejudices. And I think it explains why the culture war is so boring. Culture war is largely super boring because both sides act as if the facts are already settled whilst not agreeing on the facts.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how is it that we've got to the stage where their prejudices just get moved around until they can come up with the outcome that they already wanted before you even ask the question about the thing that you're talking about? That's the situation we end up with, and I think it explains why the culture wars feel so samey and nothing really ever seems to move. Like, it's not moved forward. It goes at such a snail's pace. The news is operating at light speed, and the way that we move forward with our conceptual understanding of the world is moving forward at a snail's pace. Well, how are these two things happening together?
Well, it's technological advance, right? Technological advance is so much greater and faster than biological advance. This is the scariest thing that leads us down the road to AI, is that as we are so limited in our biological ability to evolve, biological evolution takes so long, cultural evolution takes so long, whereas technological evolution is almost instantaneous. And we are being overrun by this thing that's captivated our attention. I was talking about this the other day. I was like, imagine if there was a drug that made you stare at your hand for 6 hours a day. You'd be like, keep me the fuck away from that drug. But that's what your phone's doing. Mostly you're getting nothing. Occasionally you get a funny meme. You know, if I looked at the amount of time that I spend online on a given day and how much of it is really fascinating to me, well, every now and then you get a story like that story about the whole universe might be inside of a black hole, and then I'm on a rabbit hole.
The pyramids, so there's this interesting insight about that.
There's a few things you'll get, but I kind of feel like you will get those if you're offline, just by other people being online. They'll send it to you. Like you're almost better off.
You don't need to be the one doing the first pass scouring.
Exactly. Your resources are better utilized by not doing that.
Did you see that? It was a guy who removed people's phones from their hands. The photographer who went around, I think it was maybe New York City, and he took photos of people and then CGI'd the phones out. You know, you're talking about it. Imagine if there was this thing and it made you stare at your hand. He actually did it. So it shows just how absurd it is. You know, you've got an entire train carriage on the subway on the underground.
And everyone's staring at their
And it's just people staring down at their hands. Like this. And it needs that to sort of throw the absurdity into it. But then on the flip side, if you don't live with your parents, you're in a different city, you work a job you're not that enamored by, maybe your health's good, maybe it's not so good, you're a little bit worried about stuff, you're kind of bored a lot of the time, you need to be sedated.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, wow. Oh, those people just sitting there staring. Oh, that's so crazy.
Go back, Jamie, go back up to that one of the kids.
Wow. Well, this was 2015. In 2012, I started trying to take pictures of people in public looking at their phones, and it wasn't that common. It wasn't that.
Well, that's like when social media kicked
Yeah.
off. In the beginning, no one was on it.
See it.
It's like most people weren't even on Twitter. They're like, why would I be on that? And, you know, people were using it to promote things, and then they started using it to elevate their profile, and then people became influencers. And once people became influencers, and once people, like a regular person, you get a couple of million followers, then all of a sudden you get sponsors, and that's your job now. You're an
Notoriety,
influencer.
respect.
Yeah, and fame. I remember when I was living in LA, it was right around the time that a lot of these, God, what was it back then? What was the thing that was like, it wasn't TikTok. Vine? Yes. Yeah, it was Vine. Vine influencers were the first. And they were famous. So they'd go to restaurants and be like, that's blah, blah, blah. Like, who's that? Like, oh, he's got 35 million Vine subscribers. Like, what? It was bizarre because you've seen just regular people that would do antics or cause scenes or do something to get attention. And they developed large followings.
Isn't it the number one job that primary
want.
school
Yeah.
kids want is to be a YouTuber or an influencer?
Yeah. Well, they all watch them. They all watch people eat food and open up toys, and it's like very weird. It's very weird stuff because no one would have ever predicted that that would be something that would captivate people's attention on a television, right? There was no unboxing shows on television, but yet unboxing shows on the internet are huge. Like people get sucked into the most mundane things. Someone opening up a package. Oh, look at this. Here's the new phone.
Yeah, well, unboxing in some ways I actually think is quite satisfying. I quite like watching the people that have got here's the new MacBook M4 thing and it's shot all nice. And, MKBHD.
Yeah,
you know,
he
like
does a great job.
watching him do his stuff is really great.
But he also does a comprehensive analysis of the tech.
it's not
and-
just here's
Yeah.
me playing with a new MacBook.
No, he's doing a review of state of the art. You know, like where is technology currently, and what's the best version?
I think when it comes to desiring a life, looking
That there used to be very common for people to eat, but then a bunch of people developed like pretty severe food allergies, and he makes this connection that he believes it's a reasonable connection to say that there's something.
Absolutely. Oh, 100%. And it's not just something he's dreamed up. Again, provable medical literature in the book, Dissolving Illusions. The physiology, the pathology is known. It's very well known that the vaccines that have aluminum in them skew the immune system. So the immune system kind of just, if you want to break it down really simply, you have your Th1 arm and your Th2 arm. Your Th1 arm is a really important one. Those are your T cells, your lymphocytes, the cells that, chew up any garbage that's going around. That's the part you want activated in any infection you have, whether it's COVID or measles or smallpox or whatever. And then you have your Th2 arm, which is there mostly to deal with parasites and things like that, and it's mostly an antibody arm of immunity. That's the one that vaccinologists are obsessed with, making sure there's enough antibody. So the vaccines that have aluminum in them, as opposed to the live attenuated vaccines, which don't have aluminum, all the other ones do. So your DT, AP is going to have aluminum in them. All your killed vaccines are going to have aluminum in them. And that is very well known to trigger that Th2 response, which is the allergic response, which can set up your body for autoimmunity. And so part of the purpose of breastfeeding, just part of the blueprint for humanity and every other mammal, is that the mother is able to introduce antigens in the world to her baby through her own breast and things that she's been eating and breathing in, and then the baby's able to develop tolerance. So, while vaccine scientists are obsessed with getting antibodies and ramping up an infant's inadequate immune system, the fact of the matter is that it's more important to learn what not to react to when your immune system's developing rather than to becoming defensive against every microbe that could get you. So that's kind of the paradox there, and one of the battlegrounds for immunology, within immunology, and for those of us out here that are going, what are you doing here, Anyway. But
You're also talking in your book about the importance of breast milk and the amount of nutrition that's in breast milk for a child and what it does for a child. And the differences in their immune system, the differences in a lot of different aspects of their development. which is pretty fascinating. And most people
fascinating.
kind of just assume it's food. It's just food.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot more than that.
It's so much more than that, and I was actually quite startled when I really went down that rabbit hole to see not only, I mean, it is food. It's excellent nutrition, short-chain fatty acids and sugars that the baby needs. It actually trains your gut to be healthy in the long run as an adult, which trains your immune system as well. But what that mother is putting through her breast milk, you know, things like something called HAMLET, H-A-M-L-E-T, which stands for human alpha-lactalbumin made lethal to tumors. And this is a substance, this is a protein, it's like a transformer protein that can literally turn into a cancer-busting molecule that is being used by the oncology industry, okay? And when it's not in that form, it's a powerful protein that fights off pertussis, all kinds of pneumococcal bacteria, and when it's not doing that, it's food, okay? So it's like, it's got so many different purposes. Stem cells are coming through that mother's milk. Activated T cells. Activated T cells have another substance in them that is kind of hijacked by the oncology industry. And that is when they're immunosuppressing kids for leukemia or whatever, and they come in contact, say, with chicken pox. What they can do is get somebody like me who's immune to chicken pox naturally and take my memory T cells that remember that, and there's a substance in there called dialysable leukocyte extract. When you put that into another child, even if whether they eat it or inject it into them, it transfers cellular, that Th1 important arm of immunity I just told you, it transfers it onto them and protects them for a long time. So that's kind of in the old days when mothers had measles in the old days and normally they were with passive, powerful immunity through that DLE factor, as well as all these other things, including preformed immune globulins. I mentioned something like 80,000 stem cells. It's just incredible. And we still have only hit the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we know about breast milk. But breast milk also, it's been proven again that if you are gonna vaccinate your baby, if you're breastfeeding, the vaccine will bring that baby more into a Th1. If you're not breastfeeding and you're giving formula, that baby's going to move more into a Th2 in response to that vaccine. So, I think if most women understood the powers of breast milk, they would do everything possible to be able to do it.
I think you make a very compelling point for that. I think it's arrogant that we could assume that we could replace something with the. I mean, you ever read the ingredients of formula? Like, how could that be good? Like,
parasites. We have parasites that have been parasites upon humanity for such a long time, and that's what happens is that something is discovered, and for some people maybe it can be a good idea, but then the parasites take it and want to. So when it came to breastfeeding, it was, you don't have to do that. You don't have to bother yourself like that. You don't have to pull your boobs out in public. You don't have to become a dairy cow. Just strap them down. The milk will stop, and then you can start putting this wonderful. When I was a kid, I was fed soy milk in a warm plastic bag. That was the fad then, grown up. So the formula industry is a huge moneymaker, and some women do prefer it. Fortunately, 75% of women in the USA today do initiate breastfeeding, so that's very much better than the polio days when almost nobody was breastfeeding and they were using milk in the infant formula that had been contaminated by what the cows were eating.
oh my God.
And so that was another part of the polio story that's not been told.
So the cows were all eating these pesticides
Yes,
and herbicides,
yes.
and the cows were getting sick with it, and then these people were drinking the milk from that cow and getting sick as well. Eating
Well,
the
the
meat.
cows wouldn't have been necessarily getting sick from it, but it would be concentrating in their milk, and so the milk would have been expressed. But you just brought me back to another place. Cows were also used during the smallpox era, and what you're saying is true about that. So they would basically take what they thought were. Sorry, it's just so dark that sometimes you have to laugh. But they would take pus from other animals, scratch it into the belly of a cow, then take the pus off of the big pimples that would form on the belly of a cow. The cow could become very sick, and yet that cow could still be butchered up at the butcher shop. The butcher would get sick with pemphigus or some hand and mouth disease, or it's the things that the cows normally catch. And so those cows could still be used to produce meat in those cases. I don't know that it was used to produce milk. I don't think that would have I don't know, but I know it was used to produce meat because the butchers were getting sick and the people that were eating the meat were getting sick. And certainly the people that took the vaccines that had certain who knows what in them, because it was shown like into the 1970s, 80s, and even recently, I have a reference from after the year 2000, that there was more bacteria and fungus in the smallpox vaccines than there was smallpox virus. So it was because they had this thing called pure lymph, which was pus that came out of the horse's foot or a donkey's pus skin or a cadaver of a human or a cow's ulcerating udders and scraped into glycerin and called pure lymph and marketed all over the world as this is the joke. This was our success. This is the one vaccine that eradicated a disease. Can you believe that fairy tale? I'll tell you another one. Like that, it doesn't get crazy. This is our success. This vaccine that I had described in great detail with what was in it and what people saw under microscopes and then later tested genetically was what was called a quasi-species, meaning they don't even, after a while, it became its own thing. It wasn't from a horse anymore, it wasn't from a human anymore. They called it humanized horse pox when they genetically characterized the dry backs and then ordered that every dry back specimen on the planet be destroyed. I think that was around 2009.
Why did they do that?
Good question. I don't know. Hiding the evidence, possibly, but they now have a new vaccine, which doesn't work. But they wanted to bring this one back when I was in the peak of my career in 2003. I got a letter on my desk stating that they needed people to get vaccinated for smallpox so that those other people that were getting vaccinated would have somebody that could treat them that would be immune to smallpox. Because it's well known that if you get a smallpox vaccine, you get these horrible scabs that you're going to spread smallpox and you're going to have a horrible itchy time of it, secondary infections, and you'll need a doctor at some point. Well, it turns out that the trials that they did on super healthy people, soldiers that were in top shape, were so bad in terms of cardiac disease and other diseases that the government put it on hold for a second and said, no, we can't do this. Meanwhile, guess what? They were using the same vaccine in the 1700s and 1800s, late 1700s, all through the 1800s, into the 1900s. They would sometimes, you probably saw the picture of the child's arm, considered a good take, 5 huge ulcers on the arm, with sanitation being what it was, no antibiotics. Can you imagine having your baby have 5 scars on its arm, ulcerating from these things, having fevers? Sometimes the arms became necrotic. Sometimes the disease spread all over the place, and there was nothing to give them except bloodletting, mercurials, and arsenicals, and heating them up in a dark room with no sunlight. That was the treatment for smallpox. So you tell me why smallpox was so lethal.
This episode is brought to you by Farmer's Dog. It doesn't matter how old your dog is, it's always a great time to start investing in their health and happiness. And thankfully, the Farmer's Dog makes it easier than ever to feed your dog a healthy diet of real meat and veggies. Dogs prefer their food, even picky dogs, and owners prefer their service. If you have a question about your dog, your plan, your delivery, or anything else, they have 24/7 customer service that connects you to real humans who are genuinely interested in providing the best experience possible for you and your dog. They give you detailed instructions on how to transition your dog to fresh food and even pre-portion it for your dog's specific needs. Feeding your dog healthy, human-grade food shouldn't be complicated, and with the Farmer's Dog, it isn't. The entire experience from box to bowl is a breeze. So, try the Farmer's Dog today and give healthy, freshly made food a try. You can get 50% off your first box of food plus free shipping. Just go to thefarmersdog.com/Rogan. Tap the banner or visit this episode's page to learn more. Offer available for new customers only.
Well, what's fascinating also is that most people aren't aware of the general public health conditions during the time of the smallpox outbreak.
That's right.
And the way people lived is almost unheard of. You wouldn't be able to imagine just the smell of human feces everywhere. Like, streets were filled with outhouses. There was animal shit in the streets. There was no sanitation. There's no running water. It's a disaster. And there's no good food. So you got malnutrition, you're exposed to numerous pathogens and just waste. You probably have fecal matter on everything. It's probably unavoidable. It tracks in your house. It's everywhere you go.
It's your drinking water.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
drinking water was you would skim the top off for your drinking water back then. And we know that co-infections make any primary infection worse. You know, if you have measles and you get a co-infection, it makes it worse. COVID with a co-infection, anything makes it worse. You end up with, you know, pneumonias and pus pockets in your lungs. So yeah, thank you for that description. I don't think I could have done it much better myself.
But that
was normal.
Go watch Gangs of New York. Like
Yeah.
that's obviously a drama, and you know, probably not completely accurate, but I bet it's pretty close.
Yeah.
I bet it's pretty close to how people live back then.
Yeah, the slums, like you can actually, like in here, it's not all medical articles quoted. Some of the quotes that we use are historical quotes from, you know, anthropologists that would go through.
Psychology professor in the US and asking questions like, what is more important, the truth or ensuring that equity is promoted? And a lot of professors basically said, I self-censor, I would prioritize making people feel good over necessarily telling them the truth. There are certain opinions that people should be reported for. There are certain topics that basically shouldn't be discussed. The usual suspect stuff like behavioral genetics, so heritability, evolutionary psychology, as in anything that kind of relates to sex differences. And yeah, it really is retarding the progress of every. And you think, well, trickling down from this, what sort of educated society are you going to have in the future? That's not going to be particularly good.
Well, I think it's going to encourage independent education. I think you're going to encourage people like University of Austin, which is they're aiming to do just that and to kind of bypass all this nonsense and just teach people reality. And I also think that it's most likely, I mean, I don't even want to say most likely, it's most certainly influenced by other countries that want to degrade our ability to develop meaningful minds that come out of universities, like intelligent, useful people.
Distract them with social justice.
Not just distract them, but destroy society with them. It's Yuri Bezmenov's prediction from 1984. It's like, you could pass that off as a ridiculous conspiracy theory if it wasn't totally accurate. It's amazing how people don't want to believe that maybe there's been subversion and that maybe our universities have been overrun for years with both funding, which we know is true, particularly from China. China funds a lot of American universities. They give a lot of grants. They spend a lot of money, and this was a part of the whole thing with with Joe Biden's bizarre job that he had, where he was a professor, that he never showed up for classes, and he was teaching, and he got a large
mob
salary.
teaching job.
He got a mob no-show job teaching.
But as a professor.
Yeah, as a professor, and I think he got $1 million a year to just do nothing.
You know that question that people ask about...
Find out how much he got. I don't want to get sued. But
Allegedly.
Man.
He doesn't know what's going on.
He doesn't know what's going on. Well, he might auto-sign the legal papers.
There's that question about, there's two options about life in the universe, that either we're alone or that we're not, and both are equally terrifying. Right? I feel like it's the same when it comes to Western anti-Westernism. Yeah. And you say, either we're doing it to ourselves or we're not.
Right.
And both are equally terrifying.
Yeah.
You know, you're being puppeted by this nefarious foreign power, or you're just turning around and kicking the ball into your own goal over and over again.
Well, I think people will turn around and kick the ball into their own goal, but I also think they're being helped. I think there's a substantial amount of this that just works automatically. It preys upon really weak minds, and particularly bullies and mean people who want to find other people that they can hate to justify like whatever virtue they believe they have above those people, and they'll use it to hate. And John Cleese made a great video about this, why extremism is so interesting. It's on my Instagram. I reposted it the other day. Someone posted it. We'll give him credit for it. But it's a great clip from John Cleese from 30 years ago. From 30 years ago.
Prophetic.
And in pre-social media. There's no social media at this time. And he essentially nails what's going on with both the right-wing extremists and the left-wing extremists. It's the same thing. They're the same people. They're finding a thing. Click this.
We've heard a lot about extremism recently, a nastier, harsher atmosphere everywhere, more abuse and bother boy behavior, less friendliness and tolerance and respect for opponents. All right, but what we never hear about extremism is its advantages. Well, the biggest advantage of extremism is that it makes you feel good, because it provides you with enemies. Let me explain. The great thing about having enemies is that you can pretend that all the badness in the whole world is in your enemies, and all the goodness in the whole world is in you. Attractive, isn't it? So, if you have a lot of anger and resentment in you anyway, and you therefore enjoy abusing people, then you can pretend that you're only doing it because these enemies of yours are such very bad persons. And that if it wasn't for them, you'd actually be good-natured and courteous and rational all the time. So, if you want to feel good, become an extremist. Okay, now you have a choice. If you join the hard left, they'll give you their list of authorized enemies. Almost all kinds of authority, especially the police, the city, Americans, judges, multinational corporations, public schools, furriers, newspaper owners, fox hunters, generals, class traitors, and, of course, moderates. Or, if you'd rather be an extremist on the hard right,
I bet the moderates are in there
you'll
again.
get a lovely list of enemies, only they're different. Noisy minority groups, unions, Russia, weirdos, demonstrators, welfare sponges, meddlesome clergy, peaceniks, BBC, strikers, social workers, communists, and of course, moderates. And upstart back. Now, once you're armed with one of these super list of enemies, you can be as nasty as you like, and yet feel your behaviors morally justified. So you can strut around abusing people and telling them you can eat them for breakfast, and still think of yourself as a champion of the truth, a fighter for the greater good, and not the rather sad paranoid schizoid that you really are. Seriously.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So good.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I remember.
Pre-social media.
But the dynamic is still the same,
Right. It's just amplified now so much so that it's a part of everyone's life.
So many people's morality stands on the shoulders of somebody that's fallen behind, right? It's look at how bad that person is. You don't need to look at me. And I think that if people start pointing at out-groups and they bind their group together over the mutual hatred of an out-group, that's usually an indication. I'm like, I should look a little bit closer at you. Like, it might be a good example. Lizzo. Didn't think I was going to go there. Lizzo, talking about how she was in support of these bigger girls,
Yes.
and she was going to help their careers and give
Yep.
them a platform,
Yep.
presumably a structurally reinforced platform. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, she's body shaming them, she's starving them, she's not letting them have water, apart from when she makes them eat bananas out of the vaginas of Amsterdam strippers. Douglas Murray said that she thought that she could outsource eating fruit to somebody else. And meanwhile, you think she's portraying nicey out
Right.
front. What's happening behind the scenes?
Right.
I remember this. This was pre.
One cigar?
Yeah, please. This was pre. Pre-Trump Elon, really pre-Trump Elon, and he was saying, what I care about is doing good, not the appearance of it.
Yes.
And he's discussing performative empathy in this
Yeah.
way, this sort of sense that what's most important is to protect people's feelings. And I think that this really is a point. It doesn't matter whether you're on left or right. This is a point that you should care about, because you want people to have some sense of transparency, legitimacy. They want to be telling the truth. You want to trust that what someone is saying to you is actually what they believe.
Yes.
And he said, what I care about is doing good, not the appearance of it. There are lots of people who are doing evil while proclaiming that they're doing good. And, that's the same that you're talking about there with John
Yeah.
Cleese. You're saying these people's morality will stand on the shoulders of others who have fallen behind. It's the same reason why if somebody's in the middle of a scandal, look at who comes out and twists the knife a lot. You go, I wonder what's in your... It's the classic congressman that's got the anti-gay bill.
Oh, yeah.
Who's just...
Gay as fuck.
Yeah. Glory holes and, check his hard drive. That's the person whose hard
Check
drive you
his
want to
hard
look at.
drive, yeah.
So, it's just such an obvious warning sign to me that
Yeah.
what's happening inside of someone is probably not that good.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to destroy someone, particularly, like you're attacking someone online, particularly, almost all of those people are deeply broken. There's always some creepiness that lurks behind the scenes that you're trying to cover up for with your actions. Almost always. You're trying to put the light on this person. You're going to put the eye of Sauron on this person to keep it off yourself. I've seen that a lot of, self-proclaimed male feminists.
Sneaky fuckers.
Yeah, that I know to be creeps, and I'm like, ew. And I'll see them attacking some other guy. Oh, God. I don't dive in, but I want to. Sometimes I want to just burn the boats and pull the fucking pins and the grenades.
You know what I don't like about that sort of level of aggressive criticism? I think you could describe me as a criticism hyper-responder. I'm someone for whom it probably impacts me more than it should do, certainly more than it should do for someone who gets the level of attention that I've managed to get myself to now.
Right.
And what I don't like about it is it causes people like me to be way less confident in their own positions. Because you think, oh, well, most people, if it was me, I would only give feedback if I was really certain and if I had this person's best interests at heart and if I wanted them to do better and if I actually knew what I was talking about, then I would tell this person what I think about them and what I think about what they're saying.
Right.
And if you apply that rubric to everybody else that gives you criticism, you give undue, unfair expertise and legitimacy to people who don't have your best interests at heart. They don't understand what you're trying to do. They don't care about you. They don't get it. And it causes a lot of people... Basically, I think that criticism killed more dreams than a lack of competence ever did, because people are just... I'm worried about pushing these boundaries too much.
Sure.
This person, all of my friends tell me the truth. Why isn't this person on the internet? There's this idea from Ethan Kross called criticism capture. So you'll have heard of audience capture, right?
Yes.
Where a creator starts feeding red meat to the audience, becomes very predictable.
Yeah.
Criticism capture basically says it's not the compliments, but the criticisms that are more warping. That over time, what you end up doing is changing the way that you speak. You become flaming sword wielding, card carrying member that's as aggressive as possible to push back against it. Or you go the other way and you begin to caveat very aggressively. You start to dampen down all of your opinions so that nobody can take offense to them. You have these unnecessarily long sort of diatribes, this sort of weird land acknowledgement. Well, we must remember that women are struggling with the thing and we have to, the memories. But now we've got that out of the way, let's talk about men's problems or whatever it might be. And I think I just wish that the internet was a little bit more positive sum as opposed to negative sum. And I understand that people bind together over mutual hatreds of outgroups. But the oldest story in human history is that group of people are different to us.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
The oldest story in history. I mean, it's tribal genetics. It's like baked into our DNA, literally, and it can be manipulated. And when people are doing it, and they're doing it with a very obvious distortion of your actual position, just to label you as the worst possible, least charitable version of you that could ever be remotely considered. You see that all the time, where people are just trying to distort a narrative. You're seeing that right now with Elon, right? You're seeing people justify violence and extreme vandalism, and you're seeing people cheer it on, and it's very strange. There was a thing on The Daily Show where the host was talking about the attacks on Tesla and people keying people's, and the audience starts clapping and cheering. It's so strange. It's so fucking strange. And it's also just shows you how positions just completely flip-flop. Like the Tesla used to be the car that you drove to let everybody know that you were environmentally conscious and you were a good leftist.
It's a good question. Do we care about the environment or not? Because those fumes that are being kicked out of that are
It's like
not good.
1,000 jet airplanes flying overhead for a year.
Yeah. It's
You're
wild.
lighting batteries on fire. They're so toxic.
Lithium and all
yeah,
sorts of shit getting pissed into the environment.
Oh, it's all going to come down and rain. It's going to pollute the water. The fish are going to be polluted. You're not going to be able to eat
But
them.
we're doing good. This is for a righteous cause.
Yeah, and it's all funded too. It's funded by NGOs. That's where it gets really
The
creepy.
Tesla fires are funded by NGOs.
Yeah, people are uncovering exactly what's going on, and this is where it gets fascinating because all this stuff is operated pretty much with impunity in the past, before Doge, before Elon and his crew of hyperspectrum psychopaths started to
Fucking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
super wizards started diving into all this data. This is something that Ted Cruz talked about. He said we had always known that there was these problems, but until Elon came along with these algorithms, we couldn't expose them. We didn't understand what was going on. And now they've used AI to create this understanding of the net of NGOs that is all funded by US aid and by similar type programs where you kind of have these open-ended checks that get written to the other side, that's the top. Right, yeah, right there. How often do you smoke cigars, fella?
A couple of times. Well, I fucking turned this round the wrong way. All right, no worries. Keep going.
But this is essentially the way Mike Benz describes it. He's the very best at it. I don't know if you've ever seen his breakdowns of US aid.
I love his episodes on here.
Incredible.
They're so interesting.
They're so interesting because you realize like this has been going on forever and ever and ever, and this is the arm of the government that is about regime change. A lot of the money gets funneled into these other countries, and it's under the guise of air quotes aid, but it's not aid. It's Agency for International Development, and it's all about influence and power all throughout the world, and also at home. And one of the things that it does at home is they organize these protests. They organize protests, different NGOs do, all funded by the government, all funded by taxpayer money in this weird way. And when they do it, they pay people to show up at these places. I've got pamphlets that people have given me that they've taken from these locations or gotten from email lists where
Is that purposefully no digital record?
I think probably, but I don't think they care. I mean, I think as long as they're saying they're going to pay you to protest, I think that's legal. I think it's legal to pay someone to protest. So they're paying people $1,000, and they're giving them food and snacks, and you can get a lot of people to just show up for $1,000, and then some of them are going to get a little vandally. Some of them,
Bring enough people together and they get vandally.
How crazy is it that the left are the ones who are painting swastikas on cars? Just understand how crazy positions can flip and flop. The left is upset that we're not continuing an endless war in Ukraine. The left is upset that this guy is uncovering fraud and waste. And so in order to stop that, you must light cars on fire and put swastikas on them. Because he's a Nazi. Because he said, my heart goes out to you. Even though there's countless videos of AOC doing that gesture, Tim Walsh doing that gesture enthusiastically, many, many people.
I do think if you're in that position, if you've got this heritage coming in, just
Don't
be
do
careful with where you put your hands.
Don't.
Do you know what I mean?
Don't do that.
Like, just fucking think about where you put your hands.
He's on the spectrum, man. He's not normal.
Seen that video comparing him and Trump's son? There's two different types of autism. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
Oh my god, it's so good. I think it's at the inauguration, and they're both stood next to each other, and Elon's sort of fist pumping and loving it, and Trump's son's just like staring off.
Apparently, Trump's
Distance.
son went up to Biden at the inauguration and said, it's on now.
What is this, a fucking UFC fight?
I mean, that's literally, apparently, lip readers have, like, read what he said when he went up to, because there's a moment where he goes up to Biden, and Biden looks confused, and he doesn't smile, he's like, but he walks up to him and says, it's on now.
What they need to do,
Which
you know
is pretty
how
fun.
football coaches they put the play thing over the front of their mouth like this, and
Yeah.
they talk into it.
Yeah.
That's how it needs to be done now for politics with lip readers everywhere.
That kid knew he was lip readers. I don't think he would fuck. I think they tried to put his dad in jail. He wants to kill that guy. That's what I think. He's like, fuck you.
Intimidated or worse. So 226 years of propaganda, and so I'm just going to give you one example, and I'll give you a copy of this to have, and you can put it up later if you want. But in 1984, because there was so much going on in terms of the public learning about the problems with the diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis vaccine, and the polio vaccines, that a federal register was issued by the government and went to all health departments in the United States, which is supposed to be just kept there and never circulated. And it said, quote, any doubts, whether or not well-founded, about the safety of the vaccination program must not be allowed to exist. That's literally what it said. It's straight out of Lenin. So you had that, and then you have the changing of the goalposts and the outright lies within scientism, because it's not science, it's a religion that calls itself science, and we still are a victim of that today. Most science today is sponsored by the very people that are going to profit from it, and I think even Jenner, who invented the smallpox vaccine, never did a scientific study. He never did a controlled study. He never did non-vaccinated people, vaccinated people, and then expose them to smallpox in a large enough group. He would cowpox them and then expose them to smallpox. And it was well known that smallpox followed cowpox. So it's just been, look, again, I never expected to be here. I just wanted to be a healer. I just wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a nephrologist and teach medical students and make the world a better place for people. That's all I ever wanted. This is a nightmare for me, actually, while I've met some incredible people and I've had a really good life and I have no regrets and I would do it all again, no doctor wants to be put in a position where their integrity is doubted, their sanity is doubted. And if you want to pull up a page called, it is called Rational Wiki, I think, maybe? Anyway, I'm considered a Sith Lord, a very, and in fact, I didn't know what a Sith Lord was back then. I had to actually look it up, so I'm like Darth Vader. So it was a bit of a compliment, but on the other hand, most doctors can't tolerate being called quacks or having their reputation destroyed. And you know, I went from treating the CEO of actually the head of the laboratory at my hospital for hypertension to becoming, you know, somebody that was doubted on every levels after a while because of one thing that I said, which was, can we stop giving vaccines to my sick patients, to people who are having chemotherapy while they're having chemotherapy, to my patient before I've even seen them on the ward? Can we just hold this up and give it to them on the day of discharge? That was my request in the beginning. That's how this all landed here. And had they not tried to intimidate me, doubt me, and pushed me to research and show that what I saw was actually real, I would still be lockstep working as a regular doctor, because there were some good things about it. So, look, even if you look at what happened with COVID, let's just look at that. Like, how did they pass this off? Look at the media today. You know that they're giving COVID vaccines to 6-month-old children now. We know how bad it is. We know that it ruins stem cells in pregnant women. They don't give stem cells to their babies. The industry's upset because the placentas no longer have stem cells. They used to use those stem cells in research and cosmetics, etc. They're not getting them anymore because of what the COVID shots did to the placentas and those infants. That's not being talked about in the media. Nothing bad about the shots being talked about when we had Kevin McKernan and all these people looking at it going, there's SP40 in it, there was a staphylococcal endotoxin gene, there were 2 snake genes in there, you know, it's a definite gain of function. Nope, we got to put it on the baby vaccine schedule. Because any doubts, whether or not well-funded, about the vaccination must not be allowed to exist. That's why.
That sounds like a religion.
And it's been
It
going
sounds like
on.
a cult. It sounds like a crazy cult that the whole world's been sucked into. Giving a COVID shot to a baby today is insane.
3 of them. They get 3 by the certain, you'd have to look up the schedule, but I believe it starts at 6 months and they get 3 of them, kind of boom, boom, boom.
Doctors really recommending this?
It's on the, look, there's a group of people called ACIP, the doctors, usually with vaccine interests in their bank accounts, that make the recommendations for the vaccines, and they have recommended that 6-month-olds. So if your doctor is following the ACIP program, you have to be offered that vaccine. And now that doctor, this is another part of the story, is that doctor is likely to lose $250,000 a year if they don't do that, because there's incentive given to hospitals and doctors, which is what naively I was on the other end of when I woke up in 2008 and said, wait a minute, why are we doing this stuff to my sick, inflamed patients? We're giving them more inflammation. It's because the hospital would lose something like $40,000 if they didn't give a vaccine within the first 24 hours of admission.
Oh my God.
And they would get $40,000. It was all a money game. That's really the bottom line of it. And I didn't know that until a nurse years ago, who was a high-level administration, she said, Suzanne, this is why they did that to you. Oh, wow, okay. Well, at least it makes sense now.
Nobody wants to think of it as a business. Nobody wants to think you're making business decisions at the expense of someone's health, and possibly whether or not they make it. Like, what are you doing?
Well, that's been the case since, basically the medical profession was infiltrated in the early 1900s by, high-level interests that didn't want us thinking for ourselves and carrying on the natural cures that actually work, carrying on with normal midwifery. There were just so many changes that happened as a result of best practice medicine, not to mention, the forming of the AMA by a couple of real quacks. That's a really good story. And the AMA would give their stamp of approval. So say you created an infant formula, well, they would say AMA approved, and your infant formula would sell even better. Remember when doctors smoked Camels because Camels were best? Those were the days.
And this is also the time when this coincides with when Rockefeller was designing the school system, right?
Well, first Rockefeller, I think oil was one of their primary
So that's the pharmaceutical
investments.
aspect of
That's
it.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, so you want to talk about the school system?
No, but he did both, right?
Okay.
He was a part of both. So he was a part of the reason why natural cures are so easily dismissed and why it's so dismissed is Rockefeller put the entire medical establishment on oil-based, so all pharmaceutical drugs that are made by using oil.
Yeah.
And he did it because he sold oil.
Want to know the irony? It kind of works.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I got rid of a really bad case of mange in a dog by kerosene, putting kerosene diluted in olive oil, and they'd been through everything. They could not get rid of this mange on this beautiful dog.
Oh, wow.
It
That's
was
crazy
a cane
that
corso
worked.
dog, and so
Mange is horrible for dogs. Oof.
really bad. But one spray was done.
I had a dog that I picked
You have
up.
to keep careful around the flames and stuff.
I had a dog that I picked up off the street and took her in, and she had horrible mange, but it all went away with just food. Just gave her healthy food.
No, it can't. Joe, come
Yeah.
on, you had to have an expert help you.
No kerosene, no nothing, just love.
Food. Oh, that was
Food
an
and
argument
love.
I had in a hallway once with the senior chief of medicine. He was like, he would always say, so how are you today? And normally he'd be like, good, superficial confidence. I said, by the way, I'm having real trouble with, the H1N1 vaccine, my patient's getting kidney failure after getting it. And he turned dark on me. I never saw him dark before. And he said, no, that just didn't have time to take effect. And of course, then I heard every kind of soundbite in the book from him, which I didn't know were soundbites at the time. And then he said, well, what do you think is happening with meningitis and these college kids? I'm like, come on, that's a total no-brainer. It's like their nutrition goes down the tubes when they leave home. They're smoking, they're staying up all night long, they're hanging out with their pals. They're doing everything they couldn't do when they were at home. Oh, you got to be kidding me. So you think it's the food that's causing problems? And I was like, well, what medical school did you go to? Like, I was actually taught that nutrition matters and how it matters and why it matters. But that's been almost completely like if you want to sneak a vitamin C into somebody's hospital room, you know the best way to do it? Don't bring in jar vitamin C because they will stop that at the door. You get yourself a McDonald's milkshake or a burger, and you just dump that milkshake out, and you put something else in there, a smoothie with some vitamin C, and they will say, off you go, that's perfectly fine. That's going to be great for this person, this child. That's how you can get it in, because they think that McDonald's is wonderful. In fact, McDonald's are kind of situated proximal to a lot of hospitals, and Ronald McDonald houses are there and everything else. But bring in a homeopathic or, magnesium or vitamin C, and you've got to get permission for it. Go through so much red tape, and a lot of time you'll be told, you can't give it because, you'll cause bowel necrosis, you'll cause diarrhea, you'll cause kidney stones, everything in the book that doesn't actually happen with vitamin C. But it's what look, they've measured vitamin C levels on people that enter hospitals, and pretty much everybody's deficient or on the border of deficient when they enter, and pretty much everybody when they leave has got borderline scurvy, if not full scurvy. Fortunately, they go home and start doing other things and can rebuild some of their vitamin C scores, but there's a lot of subclinical scurvy walking around out there, and those are the people that are going to do the worst with the vaccine, and they're going to do the worst with
Subclinical scurvy in modern society, just from poor
absolutely.
diet.
Well, it's not just the poor diet. So any kind of stress will consume vitamin C. A cigarette will consume 75 milligrams of vitamin C, and they tell you that you only need 190 milligrams a day. That's the FDA requirement.
Wow.
So you just have a few cigarettes and you've depleted your stores. So we don't make our own vitamin C as humans. Humans and guinea pigs, we don't do that. And so we have to consume it. And we're reliant upon our fruits and vegetables or supplements to do. Or if you eat organ meat, you can eat the adrenals that are loaded with it. But aside from that, it's the fruits and vegetables that are going to give it to you. So if you're under a lot of stress, or you're taking medication, or you have a lot of inflammation or arthritis, whatever, that's going to consume vitamin C, because vitamin C is an antioxidant as well as an antiviral, and good for your nervous system. So yeah, most people are walking around skimming the edge. If you can see kind of a red line on some people's gums. They're probably vitamin C deficient. If your gums are bleeding a lot and you floss, you probably need some vitamin C. And you could have an infection too, but it would deal to the infection as well as the integrity and the collagen inside of your bones and your soft tissues. I mean, it's like one of those things that's so important it should be given upon admission to every hospital.
And what's really crazy is if you're one of those people that thinks that all you need is a balanced diet, and you're eating like a piece of chicken and some lettuce, like that, there's no vitamin C in any of that, or not enough.
Probably not enough. Yeah,
not enough.
Won't do it.
Yeah, if you're not consuming like some sort of liposomal vitamin C supplement, if you're not taking something on top of that, you're probably not at an optimal level to survive anything. It's like part of why we have so many metabolic diseases. We have bad metabolic health. We have metabolic diseases. Like it should be super obvious. Like, oh, everyone's like really unhealthy and doesn't have any nutrients in their system, and they're all getting really sick from all these different things. Huh? But everyone's like, no, you need medicine. You need a shot. You need a this. You need a that. You need to get on this. You need to get off that. Get back on this.
And you're a hippie if you want to just eat kiwi fruits and get your vitamin C from that, or have oranges, or broccoli. Oh my gosh, broccoli makes you a total hippie. Or kale, forget about it.
Nuts.
Now, see, we have a different kind of malnutrition today than we describe in the book. Back then, it was people were toxic from basically drinking poop water and being worked to death and having diseases all around them. And so they were protein, calorie malnutrition, as well as vitamin as well. Today, we have kind of dysnutrition, like DYS, dysnutrition, and that everyone's fat, so they don't really look malnourished. Pretty much, you go on a cruise or you go to the beach, even
go to
skinny
Bert
people
Kreischer's
have
house.
big bellies now. Big belly is the thing. What was that?
I said go to Bert Kreischer's house.
Who's that?
That's my friend.
Okay,
He's
hi,
gonna
Bert.
hate that you don't know who he is.
But, so today we've got inflamed guts from, glyphosate and, the wheat that's been altered to make us inflamed, and then just the chemicals that are added to our food, and the vitamins that actually don't help us and set us back, that are fortifying our, bread and milk, lack of vitamin D. So we have a different kind of a problem, but essentially causing the same bodily dysfunction.
Yeah.
On the outside of the hut, and it's completely burned down. So he's burned the only structure that was going to give him any safety. He's managed to burn it to the ground. And as he wakes up, again, sort of may have noticed that this is a recurring theme, a wolverine attacks him. 65-pound wolverine, fucking fangs, yellow eyes, attacks him. So Amo uses his knife, kills this wolverine, fight to the death, kills it. But then he realizes, I don't have a knife because my soldiers took it from me. It was his compass, which was the only thing he could use to navigate himself. He'd smashed his compass to bits, and then he looks down, and it wasn't a wolverine, it was a tree log. So he smashed his compass on a tree log, thinking it was a 65-pound wolverine. He's still just deep in the hole. Continues to ski around. He's trying to find someone, trying to find any way marker that he can. Now, with no way to navigate, he's got no compass, he's got no weapon. I mean, the rifle that's got no ammunition in it. He finds a Soviet forward operating base. But you'll know this, a lot of the time when armies left these behind, they booby-trapped the fuck out of them. They booby-trapped everything. So he walks onto the middle of the forward operating base, immediately gets exploded by a landmine, fuck gets blown. So he's laid there in the snow, kind of waiting to die, and one day later, he's not dead. So he's like, well, fuck it, I might as well try and get into the forward operating base. Gets up, continues to go forward, opens the door to the forward.
He has no foot?
It's damaged. It's severely damaged. Gets toward the front of the operating base, opens the door. There's another booby trap there that explodes him and the door like 20 yards backward. He just lays there in the snow waiting to die. He lays there for about 5 or 6 days, waiting to die. And he's melting snow in a little tin can thing, like melting it so that he can drink a little bit of water. He's got this door on him. He thinks, well, someone's going to find me. It's going to be the Soviets. They're going to kill me, or I'm just going to die. So he waits. Death doesn't come. 3 Finnish soldiers come upon him of all of the different nationalities, of all of the different people. 3 Finnish soldiers come upon him. He thinks, finally, after all of this time, after being confused, after getting lost, I'm going to be saved. They say, it's okay, we can take you back. We can save you, take you back. And the front guy of the 3 Finns steps on a landmine, blows himself up. And the other 2 are like, hey man, there's kind of a priority list here, and you're at the bottom and he's at the top, so we're going to take him back, but just hold on for another couple of days, we'll come back and we'll save you. They go away, and he just thinks, they're not going to find me again, they're going to forget, they're not going to be able to come back, someone's going to kill me before they do, or I'm going to die or whatever. But they do. They manage to come back, they manage to get him, and they take him back to the medical bay. 14 days was how long he'd been traveling around. He'd moved 250 miles in this time. His resting heart rate was 200 beats per minute. And he weighed 98 pounds. He'd survived this entire time on meth, water that he'd melted down into a tin cup, a couple of pine nut things that he'd melted too, and a single Siberian jay that he beat to death with his ski pole and just ate raw. And he lived until he was in his 70s, died in like 1989, and just lived a great life. I fucking love that story, dude. This meth-fueled Finnish maniac, just like skiing through everything, setting shit on fire, hallucinating, getting blown up twice. Survived it. Meth's a hell of a drug. Maybe you should have done it.
Maybe I should try now. It's amazing what was accomplished on amphetamines. I mean, Norman Ohler's book, Blitz.
I loved those episodes that you did with
Yeah, incredible. It's just an incredible story that they literally went through Poland in 3 days, just methed out of their fucking minds. And the most meth was given to the people at the very front, the people that drive the tanks. They were the most cranked up.
because they'll drive the rest of the
Yeah.
group forward.
Yeah, and also they have to be the most psychotic because you're going to be the first people to encounter resistance.
So you need to be the most risk averse.
Yeah,
Oh,
most-
the least risk averse.
least risk averse, the most maniacal and murderous.
I wonder, it's kind of a debate around how much of Hitler's behavior was because of Hitler and how much was amplified, worsened by the drugs that he was on. That Theodore Morell, that crazy kooky doctor that he had, is injecting him with
Yeah.
bull semen, he's getting fucking cocaine.
Everything. Yeah. A lot of it had to do with that. It had to. I mean, it had to. It's a factor. It's a giant factor. Just how much of it? What would have been like? What would the wars have been like were there no meth? I mean, that's probably the first amphetamine-fueled war, right? Was World War I fueled by amphetamines? Did they have amphetamines back then?
I mean, I don't know what you do to get people to go over the top to certain death. Like, how do you... I mean, you motivate people by everybody else doing it. I suppose it's sort of crowd behavior in that way.
Well, they know that meth was given to the kamikaze soldiers, which makes sense. I mean, it's a great way to... You're just going to fly that plane right into that boat. You're like, what?
Having a great time. Sure.
Yeah. No, I'm going to fly to a fucking island and hide. During World War I, militaries used cocaine and other drugs for medicinal purposes and to enhance performance. So, cocaine. British Army sold cocaine-containing pills under the brand name Forced March.
That is the best branding in the world.
Increase endurance, suppress appetite. 1916 British Army Council banned the unauthorized sale of psychoactive drugs. I wonder why they did that. They didn't want to win?
You don't want to have fun?
Yeah,
What, are you the fucking fun police?
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, is it Go pills? Is that what they give to fighter pilots?
Yeah, they give them something. British Army's pill number 9. What's that? Pill number 9 was just a strong laxative. This is AI. Lies. What was in there? Specific medication used by British Army during World War I. Primary ingredient, pill number 9, was calomel, mercurious chloride, mercury-based compound. Used to treat intestinal infections and other ailments. Oh, okay. Just massive diarrhea pills.
I don't know how that's a performance enhancer.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Sometime they figure it out. Feel like
Yeah,
on your feet. I don't know.
Seems like the cocaine would be more effective
Cocaine will make you go to the bathroom as well. So,
to
yeah.
accomplish our goals.
Yeah, you said you said before about sort of that self-authoring thing, like taking control of my own life. My friend George has got this great question where he says, you're stuck in a third world prison and you get one phone call to ring somebody to get you out. Who'd you ring? And that idea I love because it helps you to identify who the highest agency person is in your life. Who is it that can think on their feet, that doesn't need permission to go and do anything, that'll overcome obstacles, that is this sort of, permissionless reality bender?
Right.
Who would you call?
I don't know, man. That's a good question. That's a really good question. I'd have to really think about it. Also, I don't know anybody's number.
That's true. Yeah,
That's
I guess.
a problem.
Can I Instagram DM them? Is that all right? Can I log in? Actually, can you give me my phone? Because I got two-factor authentication on. This is going to be really awkward. Is that all right? I need to do that. Yeah, I mean, I would be tempted to ring Tim Kennedy. I think he would probably be quite high up on my list
Yeah, he would help you a lot.
if I had access to my phone.
Yeah, dirty deeds done dirt cheap.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it might be a bit gratuitous. I get the sense that he would take more pleasure in getting me out than would be necessary. You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's got to be the worst place to be in the world. Foreign prison with no way to call somebody. You know, this is the criticism about these illegal aliens that have been shipped off to, what is it, El Salvador? Is it El Salvador that they have the super prisons?
Yeah, I think that's. We spoke about this last time. That
Yeah.
was just as they'd been created. These football stadium-sized monstrosities.
They essentially got all the gang members off the streets and locked them up and dropped crime radically, dropped violence radically. They essentially said, enough of this. We're just going to go after all these gang members and lock them all up. And the criticism about these deportees that we're sending people over there, we're sending plane loads of people over there, like, what if you're in that group and you're not guilty of anything? What if you're just a guy who came over here from Mexico and you're a tattoo artist? U.S. deports 250 alleged gang members to El Salvador despite court ruling to halt flights. Yeah, there's a court ruling to halt the flights, but here's the thing. If they are gang members, if they are Tren de Aragua or those gang members that took over, yeah, if that's real, then this all makes sense. But the fear is that there's going to be certain people that are rounded up in this that are not guilty.
Collateral damage.
Right, and then these poor people are going to be trapped in this El Salvador prison, and no one's going to believe them that they're innocent.
It says it all that El Salvador has got a reputation for being so good at prison and law enforcement that they're fucking importing people over there. And it's like, oh, we need to, you said before, if I've got a bad knee, I want to go to the guy who looks after the Lakers. It's like, you're the Lakers PT doc of the rehabilitation world. It's not even rehabilitation, it's about just incarceration world.
Yeah, it's just incarceration, and there's probably a financial incentive. We'd probably pay them to house these prisoners. But the question is, are we sure? Like, how many of these people are being accused of being gang members because maybe they tattoo gang members? Maybe they were caught up in a raid, and maybe they are
friends of gang members.
Maybe they're just an artist who happens to be an illegal, or maybe they're someone who's working on a construction site and they get rounded up and they get shipped over there. That's a legitimate question. When you're arresting people and prosecuting people, and your goal is to arrest people and prosecute people, you do your best at that. And the question is, how many people get arrested and prosecuted that are innocent? Well, in the real world, what we know is quite a few. I mean, I do a lot of podcasts with my good friend Josh Dubin, who's spent a considerable amount of his life helping innocent people get out of jail. That's his main thing that he does, is work with unjustly prosecuted people. And you find the levels of corruption to be horrific. The prosecutors, DAs, the amount of corrupt judges, it's shocking. It's shocking when you lay the facts of these cases out, like the Ohio 4. These people that were in jail, proven that one of them could not have possibly been there when the crime was committed and still was in there for 30 years. The actual guy who's the informant came out and said that he was told to say all these things, it's all lies, then was told when they were going to bring it to trial again, you will be arrested for telling lies now. You will either be arrested because you're lying now, or you'll be arrested for telling lies previously. So he won't.
This is like that thing, if she sinks, she's not a witch, and if she floats, she is.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And then there's the game aspect of it. The game aspect of it is victory, right? If you're a prosecutor, your job is to arrest people and prosecute them and convict them. That's your job. That's what your self-worth, who you are as a prosecutor, your reputation is based on success.
Yeah, your record.
Yeah.
Your perfect record of this many convictions.
Yeah. It's the same with cops, unfortunately. A lot of cops their whole thing is making arrests.
It's a shame, isn't it? You talked about the fire service earlier on, 3 emergency services, fire, police, and ambulance. When the fire service turns up anywhere, I don't think that there's any issues. I don't know how often firefighters find themselves up against a crowd that's unhappy. Maybe, I guess, if it was a riot of some kind, perhaps.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's a hero that's coming to save the cat stuck in a tree, the house that's on fire, the baby that's upstairs.
Yeah.
Like, hooray, well done for you.
Yeah.
Medical service turns up. Somebody's really badly hurt, or somebody's broken. Some kid at a sports match has broken their leg. Thank you so much, please. You look after them. And then the police turn up, and the reaction could not be more different.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I understand that there's a particular type of control that cops have, that sort of firefighters and EMTs. Firefighters and EMTs are doing stuff exclusively sort of in service of others, whereas cops are doing something that sort of subtracts away. But it must be tough. Like, if you're a good cop, especially now, especially after the last few years, it must be hard because you want to feel proud about your job.
It's unbelievably hard. It's also very hard to get people that are good people to sign up for it now because they don't want that abuse.
I wonder if that's been reversed over the last few years.
I bet it has in certain jurisdictions, in certain areas where they've valued cops. And, this whole defund the police thing was just so wild. It was so crazy to see that people would think that would be a good idea. And even to espouse it publicly, to erode public confidence in law enforcement, just writ large.
You notice that that's largely dropped off now.
Yeah.
No one's really talking about defund.
It didn't work. It had the opposite effect. Crime escalated, and the people that lived in the communities wanted the cops back.
In the areas that were the worst affected as well. It's a luxury belief.
Yeah.
It's something that's held by the upper classes that only impacts the lower classes.
Yeah, and it's also a thing that the political establishment will use as a tool to align with them. People will say it, like Kamala Harris in 2019 was saying, I need to defund the police, we should defund the police, which is just crazy to say. You need to fund them more, train them better. They need training the way military groups need training constantly, consistently. And, they're encountering horrific things. My friends who have been cops and have served overseas, most of them will tell you that they suffered more PTSD as cops than they have even in the military. Yeah, depending upon your service, depending on what you had to do. But a lot of them, it's just like every day you're seeing some nightmarish situation. Horrific violence, domestic violence, child abuse, murdered kids. You're seeing so much horror, and then your version of reality is based on your experiences. Your experiences are horrific every day.
Do you think you'd be able to switch off if you had a job like that? You'd be able to partition, compartmentalize?
I wouldn't even ever guess that I could pull it off. I wouldn't even guess. I don't think anybody even understands what that even means unless you've shown up and seen some guy's brains blown out all over the curb for nothing, for some stupid argument about nothing. When you've seen some woman get shot in front of her kid by the husband, you have no idea. No one has any idea. You don't know unless you experience it. And then you have to go home to your own children, go home to your own wife, and your brain is on fire. Your soul is just in agony. We were watching a video the other day of this guy who had to shoot this cop. This guy something was wrong. He was clearly mentally unstable, was yelling, was, telling everybody what he was going to do. They tased him. That didn't work. Then he's charging at this cop, and the cop shoots him. And then the cop's sobbing and shaking, and his partner's telling him to breathe, how to breathe, and he's just probably the first person he ever had to kill. It's horrible. It's horrible. And that's he succeeded. He stopped a threat, and he, it was justified. This person was trying to kill him. What about pulling people over and the windows are all tinted and they won't roll down the windows? You're standing there vulnerable. It could be a shotgun inches away from your face and you have no idea. And they've all seen all these videos where people get gunned down. You pull people over, all of a sudden the back window explodes with machine gun fire. I mean, they live with that every day. They live with that fear every day. And then they have to hear this rhetoric everywhere of defund the police and calling cops.
Really, it's like, but I don't know about you, but I never had a doubt. I was like, well, you're going to shut me down. You didn't stop me from traveling. Go ahead, stop me from traveling.
I hadn't read your book yet, and I was all gung-ho to get the vaccine. And the UFC had allocated 150-something vaccines to all their employees. We were doing shows during the pandemic. So I showed up in Vegas, asked for the shot. They said I couldn't do it. I had to do it on Monday at the clinic. I couldn't do it at the UFC. I was like, okay, fine. And they said, can you come back in 2 weeks and do it during the next UFC fight? I said, fine, I'll do it then. During that time, it got pulled from the market for blood clots.
Which one? Which jab was
Johnson
it?
& Johnson.
Okay.
And then 2 people I knew who got it had strokes.
Okay. In that 2 weeks?
Yes.
Well,
in
you've
that
got a
2
few
weeks.
angels, don't you?
Yeah, and I was like, hold on. And then my whole family got it. There was like a bunch of things that happened. My whole family got it, and everybody was fine. And I didn't get it. And I was trying to get it. Like, I had sex with my wife. I hugged my kids.
You didn't get COVID?
No, I didn't get it.
But you didn't get the jab either?
No.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. But I didn't get it first time around. I was like, this is crazy. There was 2 days when I went to the gym, because I was trying to get it. And which sounds horrible, but
You're
I
not
was
allowed
like,
to not get it, Joe.
I just wanted to get over it. Like,
Yeah.
my kids got over it so fast. Like, my one daughter was one day, she had kind of a headache, and she tested for COVID, and she thought it was hilarious. She started laughing. She's like, oh my God, I have COVID. But we had already told them it's not dangerous for kids. Don't worry about it at all.
Right.
Because there was a lot of kids that were talking about getting vaccinated. I'm like, you are not getting no. For them, I was like, no way. Like, it's not. I'll do it if I have
But
to
what
work.
made you say no way? Like, what did you think about it that you didn't even want your child to get it just in
Totally
case?
unnecessary. So no need to risk it. Totally unnecessary. They got COVID. They got over it like that.
But
before
what risk
the
did you
vaccine.
think they would have?
Before the vaccine. But this
Yeah.
is before the vaccine. So after that,
oh.
I was like, there's no way. Because there was pressure from their friends to get
Yeah,
vaccinated.
yeah.
I was like, you're not getting vaccinated. You have 7 times better immunity than someone who gets vaccinated, which is proof. And this is just antibodies, right? And you enlightened me in your book to the fact that there's cellular immunity that's different than just antibodies. Antibodies is one type of immunity to things, right?
That's right.
So
It's
I
that
was,
TH2 plant that we were talking
for
about.
me, with my kids, it's like they're vaccinated, but we did it on a delayed schedule because that's what my doctor recommended, and we had a really good pediatrician, and it worked out great. They're fine. But I was a little worried. I thought it was quack-like to be worried, like this is science, like back
Worried
then.
about what?
About what vaccines could do to the kids.
The regular ones.
Absolutely, and the schedule, the way they wanted to just bang them up, like real quick. And with weird ones, like the hepatitis B one, that one was like, when I hear that, I'm like, what are you talking about? You're going to give a kid for a sexually transmitted disease a vaccine when they're a baby?
A one-day-old baby.
That's crazy. And also, is their immune system even working right? I mean, will it even accept this and turn it into an antibody? Like, have you proved that? Like, you're just jabbing
They
kids?
have proven that the infant will make antibody, and that's all they ever have to prove.
Oof.
What they don't ever want to prove is that when you give, like say your child had gotten a COVID vaccine, there's something called original antigenic sin. They changed the term to linked epitope suppression. It happens with flu shots. It happens with lots of different vaccines. Is that if you program your body to attack, the strain of vaccine that you're a virus rather that you are injecting against, and then a different strain comes along, it actually has negative efficacy. You are one that's more likely to succumb to terrible problems from the infection than because of your vaccine rather than it actually protecting you. And that's been a well-known, look, Anthony Fauci writes about it, Morins and Fauci wrote a paper basically admitting everything, I think it was in 2023 or 2024, about these shots, and he said the COVID shots are exactly the same as the flu shot. despite that, despite Fauci and Lawrence talking about how these shots would never have been licensed if they were held to the same standards of DPT, et cetera, that they don't provide lung immunity, they only provide blood immunity, negative efficacy, their conclusion at the end of it is that we must make better vaccines, more effective vaccines, to add to the already existing vaccine program. It's not that we shouldn't do this. It's not that we should pull this off the market. That's always the logic. Again, they never will admit to any problem with vaccines to take it off the market. It's always adding to it, not removing a vaccine. Okay, you think it was bad? Let's start 6 months now. 6-month-old babies with parents that are just like you back in the day going, okay, if you really think it's necessary because, oh, Granny doesn't want to catch COVID, we're going to do it.
Yeah, that was the logic. Well, worry about Granny. But, you know, this is the Great Barrington Declaration, right? Where those guys were like, why don't we take the people that are vulnerable and isolate them and treat them and care for them and not worry so much about everybody else and not shut society down because it's going to have profound impacts. And they were called kooks. And that's what's crazy. It's like during the censorship was so rampant that prominent scientists and physicians were removed from the social conversation because they disagreed.
That's
People
always
who are
been the
experts.
case, though. That's always been.
It's just, but when it's happening on social media and it's so transparent, these people getting removed from Twitter, you're like, this is wild. This is so crazy. Then you find out that the government's involved, and the government contacted them and asked them to take things down. You're like, what are you saying? Like,
Yeah.
This is nuts.
Medical papers were retracted. I mean, there's this one guy named Pradhan, Pradhan, who he showed that there is a GP120 protein on the spike, and he said it was an uncanny similarity to the GP120 in HIV, and that there was no way that would have come out of nowhere and showed up in the 2019 COVID epidemic. And he showed genetically how that just couldn't possibly happen. A flurry of emails went through the CDC and to NIAID and to Fauci, and within 6 days of that paper being in preprint, it was removed. 6 days. And what we've got access from the Freedom of Information Act to some of those emails. They're a bit heavily redacted, but that was the series of events that happened with that. Because any doubts whether or not well-founded.
All the things you said about the COVID vaccine, I'm sure are correct and true, but isn't it also different than the vaccine that they used in the test?
Yes. The vaccine that was produced for the general public, I believe at least when it comes to Pfizer, they used magnetic beads for purification, which was totally different to what they did for the one they gave to us, and they produced it using, I can't remember exactly how they produced it, but they didn't use plasmids, and they didn't use, all the different components that were given to us. I have a slide on that somewhere that I could show you about. There were two aspects of the test vaccine that were very different it was both the production, how they produced it, and how they, quote, purified it.
And what's the significance of the differences? Like, did they do it to
Oh,
save
well, there was
money?
no,
Did they-
they just didn't have the plasmid. They wouldn't have had the lipopolysaccharide with the DNA from the E. coli that was in there that they told would never get past our deltoid muscle and would be disintegrated. Well, lipopolysaccharide actually is a transit protein that can bring everything right through your cells our cells are made of, it's like a lipid on the outside. So that was the whole purpose, was to shuttle this into your cells. Not only that, but the vaccine produced the plasmid part of the vaccine that's injected into you, the messenger RNA, has a substitution for something called uridine. They call it pseudouridine. And pseudouridine was put in there because they didn't want the immune system to destroy the vaccine too quickly. They wanted it to really be able to take hold of your body so you could have a strong response. Well, that's one of the reasons why vaccinated people had such, horrible time with actual coronavirus when it did come. And one of the reasons why you didn't, maybe you were exposed and I don't know if you had an antibody level tested. But again, that's another long history thing, is people who don't get sick while everyone else is have been accused of witchcraft and sorcerers in the past, and sometimes hunted down and killed. In the times of smallpox, the groups of people that were into cleanliness, that was a real problem for them.
I did do nasal swabs to see if I had any antibodies. I did do that, and I didn't.
Well, that won't tell you antibodies. That's a PCR. That would be your PCR test or your rapid. Which one did you do? The one that goes
Rapid.
the rapid antigen test.
Yeah.
But that's only going to tell you if you've got it active in your nose. What you want to know is if your immune system. Again, there's a good use for antibodies sometimes. It's not to see. It's not the end all be all in terms of your immunity, but it will show that you have had an experience inside of your body with COVID. And
What was bizarre to me was that there was this narrative that you were going to get it no matter what, and that's
this
why.
will stop it from you getting it.
Yeah. Well, this is before the vaccine was even around. There's this talk that there's no way to not get it. Like if it's around you, it's so contagious, you're going to get it. And that's why I was shocked that I didn't get it when my whole family got it. Like I said, I didn't isolate at all. I did it on purpose.
Yeah.
And I had 2 days in the gym where I was sluggish. And so I was like, I feel kind of tired today, but a weird tired, so I'm just going to go through the motions. I just like really light workout. And the next day I felt the same thing. Like, yeah, another light workout. Let's just take it easy. No need to push it. Just got to break a little sweat. Never stressed myself. And then the next day, I felt great. I felt 100%. Like I started working out. I was like, oh, I feel good. And then I was fine. And it's like, okay, I guess I didn't get it. And then everyone in my family recovered. And then I went from there to a couple months later, I was doing this gig in Florida. And I was up with my friend John Showman, who's he makes pool cues. Shout out to John, good friend of mine. And we were playing pool till like 5 o'clock in the morning. And I had like 5 margaritas, and we were having a good old time and laughing a lot. And then that night I was like, oh, I don't feel so good. But it was alcohol and no sleep and playing pool and, you know, and big shows and giant arenas and flying on jets and being tired all the time. You know, that's what it was. And then I got sick. But even then, it was like a couple days.
How was that? How close was that to the time when you said you felt a little tired in the gym that day?
A few months.
Okay, a few months. Good.
Yeah, it was a few months. Because by that time, the vaccine had been out. And this was, I guess, the Delta, which was, everybody was like, this was not a bad one. The Delta's not a bad one.
It's supposed to be fearful, you know.
Yeah. It was a shocking time for me because before that, I never would have guessed in a million years that I would be even questioning other vaccines. I would have never guessed that. I would have told you that vaccines are one of the most important inventions in human history, and it saved us from polio, it saved us from smallpox. I would have been that guy, ranting off all those statistics. I would have told you that. But then I read your book. I read.
Sorry.
Sorry. I read Robert F. Kennedy's book. I read your book, and I started reading Turtles All the Way Down, which is really interesting because they wrote another book called Turtles All the Way Down, and someone else published it that has almost the identical cover, and that book is a pro-vaccine book. Like they literally hijack. They're like, what do we do? Well, this is what we do. We fucking confuse the shit out of people. Make one with the exact same cover, exact same name.
Wow.
And they made it a pro-vaccine book. It's
Yeah.
kind of wild. I mean, it's really kind of a genius. Like, what a great way to like flood the market with bullshit. And the RFK Jr. book was bananas. I mean, people had told me to read it, and my initial
Which one, the
thought,
Fauci book?
yes,
Yeah.
my initial thought was, that's that guy that's like that anti-vaccine kook. That's what I thought, and I've apologized to him for that. When I talked to him on the podcast, I said to him, I succumbed, like everybody else did, to the casual narrative. What's the casual narrative? Oh, that RFK guy's a kook. Talks weird, got a weird voice.
He's ruining the world's immunity.
Yeah,
Well, I had the same thing. Like, you know, when I was first waking up, I had a friend who had unvaccinated kids that were part of a Steiner school. And they were like mutant freaks to me because they had never been on an antibiotic. They were like bright, happy, and interactive and talented. And at one point, one of them was playing with a hammer and nail. And I said to her mother, I was like, you got to be careful because she doesn't have a tetanus vaccine. And someone in the room said, well, Suzanne, what do you know about tetanus? And like in my head, I'm a full-fledged doctor at this point. And outside I said, I know you don't want to get it, and I know it'll cause lockjaw. And then I started reading about tetanus, and I had to go back and, you know, kind of apologize. And then I did a big video. I have a big video out on tetanus and the actual truth about the tetanus vaccines and actual tetanus, which, you know, that's even harder for most people. Like most people who don't want to vaccinate their kids, they'll vaccinate for tetanus if they can get a single shot, second only to polio. Everybody's got their two vaccines of their two diseases they're afraid of for their kid. makes them feel like they're at least doing something.
Well, the polio one always gets thrown in my face.
Yeah.
They say it all the
What
time.
about polio?
Yeah, and I just go, I don't have the time to do this.
Thank you.
Read the book. To explain to someone the whole DDT connection and the fact that livestock was getting polio. Like, this is the thing. Like, polio, dogs don't get polio. They don't get human-derived polio. It doesn't cross species. But they were getting paralytic polio symptoms because they were getting poisoned by DDT. Right? That was a big part of the whole thing that was very confusing.
Well, they started killing dogs. You know, in New York, in that incident I told you about where the vaccine, the gain-of-function strain escaped, people were throwing their cats out the window. Some 20,000 cats in New York City were killed during that time because there was a belief that cats spread the disease.
Oh my God. Jesus Christ. That's so crazy, and it was all a mutant man-made virus. The man-made virus thing
It
is...
was a wound up virus.
Wound up.
It was
Yeah.
basically a natural virus that got kind of wound up by...
So man-made to the final form.
Yeah.
That's just crazy that's a thing that we do. Because if this gain-of-function research was so important, wouldn't you have a cure, like, ready? Like,
did.
you've been studying this for so long, but it didn't really cure it, right? You know? I mean, wouldn't you have something that, like, stops it dead in its
You're
tracks?
not
if you
allowed
s-
to cure it. Look, I was living in a country where the government said there's no cure for COVID, there is no treatment for it, and there is no prevention for it except the vaccine. And lo and behold, we found out that there was a contract between the government and the pharmaceutical industry to have the emergency use of the vaccine trial on the population, only under the condition that there's no other treatment available. And that's why the treatments were shut down.
Right. Yeah.
Because emergency use, there has to be no other treatment available. If you have ivermectin or if you have zinc and all the other things that we use with success, you know, there were so many people that I treated that should have been dead. I gave COVID to a 95-year-old woman who had chronic lung disease called bronchiectasis. She should have been the low-hanging fruit. I was starting to feel a little bit unhappy one day, real just sluggish like you mentioned. And when I was done seeing her, she goes, I just want to give you a hug. And she came over and I was going, no. And after about 3 days, I was like, I definitely got it. I tested and I rang her daughter. And I said, I've got to tell you, I was exposed, Margie was exposed to blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, Mom's not feeling so good right now. And then 2 weeks later, I thought, I've got to call back again. I've got to make sure this lady's okay. She said, oh no, Mom's out at the hairdresser getting her hair done. 2 weeks later, I still wasn't recovered 2 weeks later. She
Did
was
she
out getting her
smoke?
hair done.
Was she a
didn't
smoker?
smoke. She probably used to. I don't know. I can't remember that detail. But there was my senior partner had leukemia. He should have been absolutely dead. Well, not on my watch. He wasn't going to be dead. So he survived the entire thing and died like 2 years later of something else. So yeah.
The most shocking aspect of getting attacked and like all the CNN stuff to me was that no one had any interest in why I recovered so quickly. Because if this
There
is
you go.
supposed to be this
There's no
death
treatment.
sentence and there's no treatment, and then I'm a guy in my 50s and I got over it quick, and then no one cared at all about that. All they wanted to do was mock this idea that I was taking veterinary medicine, which I wasn't. But it was just the fact that they used that term, horse dewormer, on every TV show. Like, wow, it's wild to watch the machine. It's uniquely wild when it's coming after you.
Pretty you need to be able to get to is so high.
It doesn't exist.
How many people have gone from left to right? I left to left type thing, like that.
Quite a few.
How many people have gone from right to left?
Very.
Why? Because if you have got a slightly fetid past, if you maybe said things in the past that didn't agree with where we are at now, the right will welcome you with open arms. But the left one,
Why do you think that is?
I think that there is a level of puritanism on the left where they are unprepared to accept people who have had positions that they don't agree with. There seems to be this odd purity spiral where they're constantly trying to point out people who are no longer agreeing with the ideology du jour of the modern world. What do you think? Why do you think it is?
I think that's probably a factor. I also think that corporate America, the whole structure of it, with human resources and people working together, it's just like, it's not necessarily what men want. What men want, if you want men to work in the best environment possible for men, they would work with mostly men. And they would probably be able to speak and communicate in a way that they did on Mad Men. You know, they'd act like men. Like, men like to act like men. Most men that are involved in corporate life act like some strange character that is what a man is supposed to be. Especially if you're supposed to espouse all the latest social justice, you know, whatever the mantra is that you have to repeat. If you have to rigidly adhere to an ideology in order to fit in with your corporate environment, you're going to do that, and you're going to be trapped in that, and you're going to just desperately want some escape. That's why CEOs wind up going to dominatrix and getting fucking ball gagged and kicked in the balls and shit. Like, what do you think that is? It's like they need something wild to escape from the mundane existence that they have in the corporate world.
They're the person that's in control all the time, so privately I need to be out of control.
It's just not compatible for most men, like that type of environment. A work office environment it's not compatible. Nobody wants to do that. What you want is the rewards of that. You want the money, you know, you want success, you want status, you want all those things, you want the corner office. But what you don't want is to work in that environment. If you could choose to make the same kind of money doing things that you love to do, having fun, like if all these corporate CEOs could make as much money playing golf, I bet they would play golf. I don't think they really want to be doing that. They're doing that because it's the way it's the way to succeed and the way to make money. And it feels like hell. It feels like hell. You're stuck in traffic every day. You're stuck in the office. You're not working 8 hours a day if you want to really make it. And this is the difference. This is like why the wage gap between men and women was such an insidious lie. Because they were always saying women make 75 cents to every dollar a man makes. And people repeat that without understanding what it actually means. No, it's job choices and hours worked. Those are the primary factors that lead to men earning more money than women. It's not a man and a woman are doing the same job and someone rips off the woman by only giving her 75 cents to what the man works. If that was the case, and the woman does just women. Yeah, you would only employ women because women, you'd pay them less, they do a better job anyway, right, ladies? So there you go. It's nonsense. But that thing that Obama repeated on television, I remember watching him say that, going, he knows better than this. This is bullshit. This is a bullshit statistic. But it's a heartstring statistic. It plays.
Good headline.
Yeah, it plays on what you want to believe rather than what's true. And women have to take time off for maternity leave. They have to, if they get pregnant, it's going to significantly impact the amount of hours they're willing to work. They might not want to do the job anymore once they're raising their children. If their husband's making enough money, they probably want to quit. They want to be at home with their kids. It's a normal thing. And then a lot of women who are career corporate women are shamed for wanting to stay home with their children.
Yeah. Oh, you've been conned by the patriarchy into being a domestic prostitute.
Oh.
So I was talking to, was it Schultz that said this? I think it was. He was telling me on the show. He said that his wife used to work at Google, I think. She was like super high-powered, real smart lady. And she used to bump into her old colleagues in the supermarket when they were together. And the classic question that somebody that's in the career trenches asks somebody else is, oh, so what are you doing now? You left work. What are you doing now? And Schultz said this sentence that his wife replied with would fucking kill him. She says, oh, I'm just a mom. He said it's the just that really hurt. I'm just a mom.
Well, that's how you feel like you're supposed to admit that you're just a mom.
That fucking hurts, dude. To derogate the people that are literally raising the next generation.
Yeah.
That's another point, actually, about sort of men falling behind. I think it seems like young boys are more negatively impacted by fatherless homes than young girls are. So any boy that grows up in an a non-intact household is more likely to end up in jail or prison than they are to complete college in the US. Any non-intact, that's adopted, step-parent, single parent, any non-intact home, they're more likely to end up in jail or in prison than they are to complete college. Yeah. And the same statistic is not true for girls. And this, again, the zero-sumness of the, so what are you saying? Are you saying that we need to hold girls back? Like, no. You do not need to hold one group back in order to be able to raise another one up. We spent 50 years really pedestalizing and helping take the reins off of young girls so that socioeconomically they can look after themselves. They're no longer financial prisoners of their partner, which is a big deal. You look at the divorce statistics from the past and proclaim it as some, amazing cultural outgrowth. And you go, how many women stayed in those relationships because they fucking couldn't afford to leave?
Right.
They had no other option to do that. That's scary.
That's scary. That's why women are so picky. And they should be.
Yeah.
It's also crazy that we put value in our lives on money above everything, including above doing a good job raising your children. You put the money that you earn above that, and you just get daycare during the day. I'll be home at 6. That's fine. That's plenty of time to be with my kid. And there's a lot of people that live their life by that, and their ledger, when they look at the amount of money that they've earned, that's the reward.
It's the greatest metric in the world, though. It's the most easy to optimize thing.
Yeah.
Like, I can tell you the size of the house that I live in. I can tell you how much money I earn per year. I can tell you what the car is like that I drive. But I can't tell you how much peace I have when my head hits the pillow at night.
Right.
I can't tell you what the quality of the relationship between me and my wife or me and my kids is.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much time I got to spend in a hammock last week. These are the things I think that if you were able to metric it, if you were able to make it a game, people would be able to pay an awful lot more attention to it.
Yeah.
But the money's the best game in the world. It's literally transfer currency, exchange. You can exchange. I know what your wealth is compared with that guy in Japan, compared with that dude in Russia, compared with this person that's Australian. Whole world, the best game ever created.
And it's the game that so many people use to show their value. I mean, it's not just the richness of your life, the happiness that you have, the fulfilled feeling that you have when you do whatever it is that you do. We feel like you have a sense of purpose. No, that's not. Can't quantify that. Can't measure it. Can't put it on a scale. It's useless. Meanwhile, it's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
The most important thing is satisfaction. Satisfaction in your life, community, love, friendship, happiness, a sense of purpose. Like you enjoy what you do. That's so important for life.
Mm-hmm.
If you are just doing something you don't want to do just for money, you live in hell. And that's most people. Most people live in this like dull hell. And they try to have fun while they're at work. They try to, have people that they talk to at work. Hopefully you make some good friends at work and you can enjoy your chitter chatter at the water cooler. But the reality of that life is just mostly suck.
There's a lot of problems, I think, that people that are driven face that don't get that much sympathy. So I had this idea that type A people have type B problems, and type B people have type A problems. So insecure overachievers need to learn how to chill out, and lazy people need to learn how to work hard and be more disciplined. And most people that listen to shows like yours or mine are probably some version of type A, like a kind of walking anxiety disorder harness for productivity. It's true.
That's a great definition.
It is. And,
That's really accurate.
I think the thing that type A people realize is that if you're type A, you get very little sympathy because a outwardly successful but miserable person is way less, always appears to be in a much more preferential position than a content being lazy but on the verge of bankruptcy one.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So problems of opportunity will always get less sympathy than ones of scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
Like one feels like a choice and the other feels like a limitation. One is like a bourgeois luxury and the other is like a systemic imposition. I need someone to teach me how to switch off and relax. Feels dopaminergic and opulent and addicted and privileged. I need someone to teach me how to work harder. Feels noble and upward aiming and like you're supporting the downtrodden. Like every underdog movie in history has a training montage of some guy down on his luck that gets saved by the right woman or a Japanese dude that teaches him to wash cars or whatever it is, and through grit and spit and sawdust, he sorts himself out and he fixes his life.
Yeah.
No movie explains how to log out of Slack at 6 p.m.
Right.
or spend a day at the beach without feeling guilty.
Right.
And so I think in that sense, type A people may objectively have better lives, but subjectively, they're ravaged by the sense that they've never done enough.
Right.
They wake up every single morning feeling as if they've already trying to repay some productivity debt. And only if they dance through the day completely perfectly, nail every single task, can they go to bed not feeling like a waste man.
Yeah.
That's where they're at. Congratulations. You might be very successful. You also might be very miserable.
You're most likely going to be miserable. That's the cold hard reality of most CEOs. Most really wealthy people, when you see them pull up in the yacht, they're fucking living hell.
I think when you look at people that are super outlier performers, you should probably, your first emotion should not be envy, it should be pity. You should think, what's it like inside of that person to drive them to do what they did to themselves, to put them in that position? What's their background like? What happened in their childhood? What do they think about their own sense of self-worth?
Yeah.
In
Or
order to
how much Adderall are they on?
the old performance enhancer. Yeah,
Well,
the testosterone for the businessman.
It's not just performance enhancer. I think it changes the way you approach things. I think.
Have you ever taken it?
No.
No?
No, I'm scared of speed. I'm scared of anything that I think I would really like.
Yeah, you haven't done cocaine for the same reason, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was very lucky when I was in high school. I knew some people that had problems with it. And
Big warning sign.
yeah, well, and back then I was very driven. Like, I didn't even party really. I only wanted to get good at martial arts. I was so driven that I didn't want to do anything that would interfere with anything else.
What was it that drove you? Why? Why this drive for so long?
There's probably a lot of factors. I mean, I got into it because I didn't want to get picked on, because I didn't know how to fight, and I would be nervous around bullies. I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, I don't like this feeling at all. Like, so I will become what everyone's afraid of. So I'll do that. And then when I got into it, I realized that, first of all, I realized that I could get really good at things. I realized that whatever drive that I had and whatever thing about fighting, which was so scary to me, why it was so appealing to me at the same time. And I realized that it was like a vision quest. I was on this quest to try to figure out how to harness my potential. And what better way than to do something that's very difficult and very scary. And then if you could get really good at something very difficult and very scary, you could probably master life.
So you had this gateway drug through martial arts that was a proof to you that you could self-author?
Yes. Yeah. Proof that I wasn't a loser. For me, it was like that I could be successful.
Where did that, I've heard you say that before about the loser thing. Where did that fear come from? Did you feel powerless as a kid at some point?
Yeah, I'm sure it comes from broken home, moving around a lot of factors. There's a lot of various factors. But it's also just the existential angst of being a young man. Like, you're looking for purpose. Like, who am I? What do I do? Am I good at anything? Like, what gives me value? And for me, when I started doing martial arts, it was the first time that I was respected. And not just respected, like, I remember the first time I realized that people would gather around when I fought. And I was like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. Like, they specifically want to watch me fight. And that was a big deal to me. It's like that I was so good that people were gathering around. Really, it was they wanted to see something horrible. They wanted to see someone get head kicked, you know, and they knew I did that
Reliably, you could
I was
kick
reliable.
someone in the head.
I was pretty good at it. And so that changed me. It changed my self-reflection. It changed who I was. I wasn't a loser. Now I was an extreme winner and really good at it and super disciplined and driven beyond anything that I thought was possible before I'd done that. I never had like that kind of focus before I got into martial arts. But martial arts demanded that kind of focus because you can't pretend. There's no pretending you're good. You have to be good. There's no pretending you're fast. You have to be fast. There's no pretending to be technical. You have to be perfect. Yeah, your technique has to be perfect because you're fighting against other trained killers. Like, you're not fighting.
Your weaknesses will be revealed.
You're gonna get hurt, and I saw so many people get hurt.
It doesn't matter about what you tweeted. It doesn't matter about your beliefs.
Nothing
Stepping
matters.
onto the mat.
Your fucking rainbow flag that you have on your T-shirt. Nobody gives a shit.
So on that, I think that's a very common pattern, especially for young people who feel a little bit helpless in their life.
Yeah.
I find a vector that makes me feel worthy.
Yeah.
the most common story of high performers, I think, is that I needed to do something to get the world to recognize me. One of the problems, I think, as people grow up is that they internalize this belief that the only way that the world will value me is if I can continue to perform at this high level. And I think that some people can imbibe a type of insecurity in that if I stop doing these things, if I stop being as impressive to the world,
Yes.
it's going to deny me its love, that it is, I'm going to be unwanted, unworthy, and I think that this, talking about the high performer thing, talking about the pity of the CEO, go, how much are you running towards something that you want, and how much are you running away from something that you fear? That this not enoughness.
Right. And the way I looked at it and the way I was taught was that martial arts are a vehicle for developing your human potential. And that through the incredible struggle of training and competing, you will learn more about your ability to excel at anything. This is the Miyamoto Musashi path. And I think that the problem with anything extreme but also fleeting, and athletic performance is fleeting. If you're at the very best, you have a couple of decades. At the very best. If you're really lucky, you have a couple of decades to define you as a competitor. But then your body will give out. Your age will win. The beating that your body takes from all the training and all the competing, eventually you're not going to be able to perform at that level anymore, and you're going to fall off. And you see it with fighters. It's really hard with professional fighters, where their whole identity is wrapped up in being a champion. Their whole identity is being the king of the hill, and then they're no longer the king of the hill, and sometimes it happens very rapidly. Sometimes it happens over the course of just 1 or 2 fights. You go from being the pound-for-pound best in the world to a guy who nobody thinks is going to win the title again. Like that. So 6 months later, you're in a totally different reality. You're in a depressed reality, and then maybe you are physically depressed because maybe you got really hurt in your last fight, so you're probably suffering from some brain damage. So you've got endocrine disruption, your pituitary gland's probably fucked, your cortisol levels are through the roof, your hormone levels are all fucked up, you might have a hard time losing weight, you're tired and depressed because your levels are all fucked up in your hormones because you're basically got your brain's being in 6 months.
Your capacity to fix the very problem is being taken away from you.
Yeah, and you see it sometimes with one fight. With a fighter, you see, like Tony Ferguson is my favorite example, who was the boogeyman of the lightweight division of the UFC for years. For years, he was the guy who was like this unstoppable force that had bottomless cardio, never stopped coming after you, and was just hell-bent on destruction, and beat the fuck out of everybody for years until he fought Justin Gaethje. And Justin Gaethje beat him so bad he was never the same again. He was never the same guy again. He went from being a favorite in the Justin Gaethje fight, I think he was a slight favorite going into that fight, to after the fight was over, he got stopped in the later rounds and never recovered. Went on.
Do you think that was a physical thing or a mental thing?
Both. More physical than mental. Because I think Tony's his fortitude is unstoppable. He's just got this mindset, but I don't think his body responded the way
I saw him on a stair machine with David Goggins. Goggins is screaming at him to keep going. He gets off, throws up in a bag, and gets back on the stair machine.
No, he's an animal. His mind is unstoppable. But at a certain point in time, particularly when you're being tested, right? So you're doing the USADA protocol at the time, and now it's a drug-free sport. So there's no peptides. There's nothing that can aid you in recovery. There's, you can't supplement your hormones. You can't recharge your hormone development. You can't. There's so many things that you can't do because they are in fact performance enhancers that would help you recover. If a guy like Tony Ferguson after that fight got on hormone replacement, got on testosterone, got his levels up pretty high, got to a point where he could train as hard, he probably wouldn't have had the slide that he had. I think part of the slide is that everybody has to be natural. And when you're natural and you get beat up a few times, you're not the same person anymore. And I've seen it many, many times. One bad beating and the guy's done. It's a big thing in boxing. in boxing, everybody points to Meldrick Taylor as one of the best examples. Fought Julio Cesar Chavez. Chavez broke him down in the fight and then stopped him with like a couple seconds to go in the last round. Dropped him, and the referee called the fight with a couple seconds to go in the last round. And Meldrick Taylor was never the same again. And he did interviews after the fight, and the interviews after the fight, like a couple years later, pronounced slurring in his words. A very clear deterioration of his reflexes and his speed, very clear deterioration in his ability to take a punch and even avoid punches. His reflexes were off.
Have you ever felt any TBI stuff from your heritage of doing striking?
No, not really. I'm sure it made me impulsive. I'm sure I probably got the right amount of brain damage to succeed in life. I think so, because it made me I'm not very risk averse. I like risks. I enjoy them. I get a thrill out of taking chances. I'm not afraid to fail. I don't mind, because I know that failure produces some of the best results. Every time I've ever failed at anything, the humiliation and the pain of it has always forced me to work so much harder. Failure in comedy is a gigantic blessing. If you have one good bombing, it sucks like sucking 1,000 dicks in front of your mother. But when it's over, you realize that can happen. You fucking tighten up your battleship. Some of the biggest like growth leaps that I've seen in comics and even in fighters is a humiliating loss.
Yeah, there's a special category of lesson that I've been thinking about. It's one that you can only learn by sort of having gone through it. And I think that bombing on stage or having a poor performance, I think that that's one of them. So
I think most of them you only learn by going through them. You learn something from watching other people's mistakes, which is why I've never done cocaine. But maybe if I did do cocaine, I would have been sober a long time ago, and I would have had a much better understanding of the abyss.
Cocaine is a performance enhancer. But yeah, it's strange, no matter sort of how arduous or costly or effortful it's going to be for us to find out these things for ourselves, for some reason we insist on disregarding the mountains of warnings that we have from our elders, historical catastrophes and public scandals, and film and TV, and we think some version of, that might be true for them, but not for me. It's the watch me do this, mum mentality. And we decide to learn the hard lessons the hard way over and over again. And unfortunately, it always seems to be the big things. It's never about how to charmingly introduce yourself at a cocktail party or put up a level set of shelves. It's never that. It's always, we spend most of our lives learning firsthand the warnings that previous generations gave us over and over again.
And then one day you're like, I'm going to throw all my money in crypto.
And then you will know about that. But that's one of them. One of them is money won't make you happy. Right? Fame isn't going to fix your self-worth. Right. You don't love that pretty girl. She's just hot and difficult to get. You will regret working too much. Worrying isn't aiding your performance. Nothing is as important as you think it is when you're thinking about it.
That they already have. And so the theory is that you're going to ramp up your antibodies, and then you're going to be able to do battle if your viruses come out again. The only problem with that is that the problem is the immune system. If you get AIDS or you're on chemotherapy, your chances of that happening are really high. Does the vaccine work or not? I don't know, but I just don't think it's just a completely strange concept to inject myself with something that I already have, along with all the other excipients and compounds that go in a vaccine that nobody wants to talk about either.
So can you explain how a vaccine is manufactured? Like, how could they not know all the different stuff that's in it? Let's talk about how the SV40 got in there. So you need something alive. You need some sort of tissue from a living creature in order to grow these things.
Well, in terms of the COVID vaccine, you just need a pile of crap, actually, because it's made on E. coli cells, and that's where you find E. coli. So with a lot of the other vaccines, you do need living. Like for tetanus, you need rotten meat. Okay? That's how the tetanus vaccine is made, with rotten meat.
You were talking about tetanus earlier, and you kind of glossed over it, but you didn't finish up. You were saying that tetanus itself, you started Googling and reading about tetanus itself.
Yeah, the big wake-up call with tetanus. So, what we see, if anyone's worried about tetanus, what we're shown is a picture of a soldier from the 1800s with he's naked and his back is arched. If you just Google tetanus right now and you look for images, you'll get this image. And And so that's what we're told will happen if we get tetanus. It's a sure thing. You're just going to get tetanus. You're going to die. Well, the fact of the matter is that when I started doing my deep dive in World War I, look, it was fought in the trenches with horses. That's where you get tetanus from ruminant animals. It lives in their gut and it goes in the soil and it's just a spore. It doesn't do anything until it gets into an area that doesn't have oxygen. So you get a cut, you get a surgeon to close you up real nice without cleaning it out properly, and you're set up for tetanus, which will transform from a spore to a different kind of a microbe and start releasing a toxin that can, it first starts as numbness, usually in that limb. The extreme case is in that soldier who would have been malnourished, stressed out, probably vaccinated for smallpox before he hit the fields, and exposed to enormous amounts of tetanus, possibly gunshot wound or a slice somewhere, and then sewn up. So yeah, his nervous system could have had a real big dose of toxin, and nobody did anything about it. That's the worst case scenario. You don't want that to happen. But in today, I've treated tetanus. Let's just put it that way. I've treated several cases of tetanus. One of the cases was a neurologically diagnosed tetanus. So tetanus is treatable. You can get on it early. Rabbit studies have shown that if you give vitamin C, if you have a good high vitamin C level before you put glass with tetanus spores on it inside the skin of a rabbit, that you can prevent the tetanus from happening. Even if you give the vitamin C at the time of the injury, you can prevent it from happening. If you give it after the event, the death rate goes down to, very, very low, if not zero. So vitamin C is a main factor, but the biggest factor is cleaning a wound and keeping the wound open if you think it's a dirty wound, and not to close it straight up, which is why nails, you say stepping on a nail is the classic, because rust can kind of hold the old spores inside of it. You step on the nail, you get inoculated, and then you wait for it to heal over. Well, you have to open that wound if that's going to happen. But tetanus has been, there's a whole series of reports on instances where the cotton that was made for menstrual pads for women postpartum was impregnated with tetanus, and they got horrible cases of tetanus just from using those menstrual pads. So the hospital systems have also been, responsible. The biggest thing is that being vaccinated for tetanus is not necessarily security against not getting tetanus. Now, am I telling people not to go get vaccinated or not? No, I'm not. I'm just saying there's so much, every vaccine, there's so much more to the story that should be considered. You can have different strains of tetanus, and if you're living on a field that has ruminant animals, you will be, whether you like it or not, you're going to be eating whatever's down in that field, and you're going to be inoculated and have antibody and probably cell-mediated immunity against it. So you'll already have some immunity to that. So worst case scenarios, you have no immunity, you go get a dirty wound, and you don't get any real competent medical care for it. Yeah, you can end up having a problem with tetanus, whether you're not going to have lockjaw and an arched back and die. Unlikely today for that to happen. But most tetanus that happens, it's delayed onset. So the earlier your symptoms come on, the worse the tetanus is going to be. If it comes on later, generally, the better you're going to do. Treated with high doses of magnesium, high doses of vitamin C, local wound care. That's the best thing that you can do. It's up to you if you want to go get jabs for tetanus after you learn everything about it. Everything's on my Odyssey channel, by the way. That's where because I got canceled out of YouTube for talking about vitamin C, for all things. So everything's now on Odyssey. All my videos are on Odyssey, and I do one that's just on tetanus. And again, medical reference after medical reference. I don't make this stuff up. I just report what I read.
It's crazy that they just kick you off YouTube for reporting studies.
Yet you can have like pornography and murder and all kinds of other stuff on there. It's pretty horrifying, some of the things that flash across. Like, I can't unsee that now.
Have you ever posted your stuff on X?
Yes, lots of stuff on X.
Yeah, so most of this stuff is available there.
Well, I got canceled out of Twitter when it was Twitter, and I could not make another account. It's like they knew where I was. They were able, even when I was using different phone numbers and different emails, I could not restore an account.
They got your IP. Yeah.
Maybe that's what I used. I used VPN as well. Couldn't do it.
Really?
Then I would get an account set up, and then they would say you went against standards and cancel it. So anyway,
they must have put a cookie on your phone or something.
Maybe.
Try a new phone.
I tried a computer too.
Wow.
But I did finally get an account. I was able to open an account and get a blue check mark. But I've only don't have that many followers. I mean, I went from having over 95,000 to having nothing, and now rebuild. They love that. They love to let us build ourselves up and chop us down and make us rebuild.
What is your account? We'll help you out.
It's Dr. Suzanne H7. DrSuzanne H7. Yeah. And I don't post my opinions about different things in the world or dog and cat pictures. Like, I post stuff about vaccines. You know, like, I stay in lane as best as I can.
So, for you, was the COVID pandemic, was that like a big wake-up call for people to start reading your book?
We've had pretty good sales. Like, Roman keeps, because he does all the accounting, and he says we just have a good amount of steady sales, and once in a while we'll see it. Like, every time you mentioned the book, we had a little blip on it. During COVID, every time Bill Gates comes out and says something stupid, we have a big surge in our sales. So they actually help us when they say with their, you know, we're going to, if we vaccinate enough people, we can help depopulate. It's like, okay, and for whatever reason, our book sales go up.
Well, when he starts talking about vaccine deniers and vaccine skeptics, whenever they started doing that, the language that they would use was, like when the president was saying, our patience is wearing thin, we've been patient with you, but our patience is wearing thin. And the White House prints this thing, if you're vaccinated, you did your job. But for those unvaccinated, you're looking forward to what did they say, a winter of...
Oh, a dark winter.
Yeah, of death and disease. Like, what?
You know, Dark Winter was a tabletop exercise. Do you know about tabletop exercises?
I do, but what is Dark Winter?
So Dark Winter was one
You can explain tabletop exercises.
that involved smallpox. Well, there are lots of them, but Johns Hopkins does. I have a whole PowerPoint on this too, but Johns Hopkins conducts a lot of them. They involve fictional scenarios where, you know, there could be pandemics and terroristic depositions of toxins and chemicals and microbes that were manipulated in a lab, and then who in our society is going to respond and how they're going to respond, like the CDC and DARPA, and the news outlets are always utmost importance is the news outlets and the messaging that goes to the news outlets in these tabletop exercises. But Dark Winter was one that was a tabletop exercise after the World Trade Center thing, when we were pointing our fingers at Iraq and weapons of mass destruction, and a Russian scientist that, you know, had weaponized smallpox and brought it to Iraq, which they never found, by the way. But because of that, that's why I was asked to get vaccinated for smallpox in 2003, was that dark winter thing that was going on. Thank God there were a few people in the CDC and consultants, the old guys with integrity that like knew the deal from the old days, were saying, wait a minute, smallpox is not easily transmitted, so that's a no-no. So even if there is a terroristic smallpox drop, it's not going to be easily transmitted. It's treatable, not high, and the vaccine doesn't necessarily prevent it. And so that was kind of one of the things that stalled it all out. But then they did the study on the Marines, because part of the exercises are we must do tests for the new vaccine. They use the old vaccine, the dry vax. There were lots of problems with those military people. And then I was asked to sign a 63-page informed consent, basically saying that I understood all the problems that could happen to me, that I didn't have little kids in my life, that I was going to be able to spread it, I would isolate after I got the vaccine. So they were ultra careful about this one, because they knew they were dealing with something that could get a very bad reputation. The reason they ultimately canceled it is because any doubts whether or not well-funded must not be allowed to exist. Because if we were saying, oh my gosh, we have this terrible smallpox vaccine, how did they do it back then? We have the same vaccine and people are getting really sick and dying and having cardiomyopathies, that's a problem. And so that's why the truth gets locked down over COVID. We know, look, you see the athletes dropping dead, you know about the cardiomyopathies and the pulmonary emboli and all that kind of thing. Nobody's talking about the stem cells that the newborn babies are born without. Nobody's talking about the fact that there are now death doulas to deliver dead babies. Like, that wasn't even a thing before. But I've got a friend that's a midwife who tells me that they are now creating a new field, which are midwives that only deliver dead babies. They do nothing else. They didn't need that before. COVID was an absolute nightmare in terms of obstetrics, gynecology, labor and delivery. A lot of midwives that got done and because they didn't get vaccinated, they don't even want to go back now that they can go back, because they don't want to have their good reputations of 100% of, normal births being dealing with what's being dealt with today in terms of the birth problems that are happening because of the actual vaccine itself. Look, if it causes problems and blood clots in our circulation, what do you think it's going to do to a placenta that is pretty much all blood vessel? That's all it is. It's like a big blood vessel sandwich is what it is.
And there was no studies that showed that it was safe to give to pregnant women, but yet they were saying it.
Well, look, every influenza vaccine package insert says it's never been tested for carcinogenicity or mutagenicity in pregnant women, yet it's recommended every year for every pregnant woman and every time they get pregnant or not. It's recommended. Same with the pertussis vaccine. Give it to pregnant women. Never mind that it changes the immune reactivity of the infant. Nobody talks about these things. This is what I say when, you know, it's like the truth is so much more complicated than the soundbite lie. The soundbite lie is what gets around the world 3 times.
Science is settled.
Science is settled. There's no debate needed because the likes of me are so crazy and, you know, whacked out, and, you know, I'm trying to destroy the good order of the general public. Things
Blood is
like
on
that.
your hands.
Blood, oh, that's a good one. I always love that one.
Yeah, it's a fun one. I like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, see if you can pull up Rational Wiki and Humphreys. You'll enjoy this.
I want to see the image of the guy with tetanus. Did you find that? Can I just see one? I want to see what it looks like when you're locked
It's an
up.
old painting.
So can I ask you, when you've treated people that have tetanus and didn't have the tetanus shot, or did they get tetanus and they had the tetanus
Well,
shot?
the one that had the worst tetanus had lockjaw and had the tetanus shot. Put in painting.
Whoa.
Put in artwork or
Look
painting.
at that dead guy. But go up to that dead guy. Yeah, right there. That's not real? Does it? That's me, bro.
It could be, but look at he's clearly been in the hospital for a really long time. He probably got hospital-acquired tetanus. Okay, you know.
Right.
No, this
but
was an
that image
artwork.
right there, what makes you think that that's fake?
Yeah, that is weird. That part there looks definitely.
It does look fake. Oh, yeah, it's probably a bunch of Nazi tattoos.
But if you put in painting soldier tetanus, then it will come up.
Is that it
There
right
it
there?
is, first one right there. Very famous. That's what's on the Wikipedia page as well.
So this is...
So
if
you don't want that to happen,
If
Joe.
you do get tetanus and there is no antibiotics...
This
and-
is surely what will happen to you.
Now, today, how would you treat someone who got tetanus?
Oh, there are antibiotics, you know, that but mostly it's supportive care until, you know, your therapy starts to work. So some people end up, if it's not dealt to in time, you can end up ventilated. But again, it's a theoretical problem, but if you get on it in time, it's certainly not been my experience. And so the ones that I've treated that haven't been vaccinated have had the easiest, mildest cases.
But, so your point
I don't
is...
know, I've not done a large randomized controlled study.
But what's really important here is what you're saying is that even if you get the tetanus shot, if you step on a nail, like, you could still get tetanus.
Look, one of the tetanus, in order to make tetanus immune globulin, which is another option when, say you have a cut and your magic tetanus shot doesn't work right away, then you can get an immune globulin injection that came from somebody who has had tetanus. Usually these are people who have actually had tetanus, not who have been vaccinated. And one of the donors that's in the literature that I use is somebody who has had natural tetanus despite having several vaccines. So no, the tetanus vaccine is not a guarantee against.
Severe tetanus.
Yeah.
That's right
Office
before you die,
letters.
they call it severe.
Yeah.
But it could also be caused by
So this is
meningitis.
the kind of the dead baby equivalent of, you know, that they use for tetanus. So this was a soldier, I believe, during a very long time ago, and he was. Don't even show you his wound. He probably steps on something. It can happen. I'm not saying it can't, but again, are parents given well-rounded information? No, they're not. They're not told that there are actually things you can do to prevent tetanus. Shouldn't they at least be told how to clean out a wound?
Right.
And not to let anybody sew it up. And secondary healing is a thing. Like, some people get open heart surgery, and because they get infections, I've seen this happen. They just leave everything open and let it fill in on its own. You end up with a big scar, but they're still alive because the infection was able to heal from the inside out, or rather the wound was able to heal from the inside out. What you don't want to happen is a wound to heal from the outside, because then you're locking in dead tissue, which is a perfect setup. Tetanus loves dead tissue, which is why they use dead, rotten meat to grow the vaccine.
Oy.
Toxoid.
What is it like to have your entire view?
I've had to jump through all of these different hoops. Well, now, how do you know if they've jumped through all of those hoops, or if they're just shooting Ozempic once a week?
Right.
And I think that this explains why a lot of people who are in shape have a real visceral reaction. Now, sure, lots of people are concerned about the drugs. Fen-Phen was this thing in the 90s that fucked people up.
It was speed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good way to lose weight.
I knew a girl who was on it. She was a very pretty girl that was a little heavy, and then got on the Fen-Phen and just wanted to talk to everybody, couldn't stop talking. and got real thin. I was like, this is crazy. And then she developed a heart problem. Yeah, that she kept for the rest of her life, I believe. I don't know her anymore, but I ran into her a couple years later, and she was telling me she has a heart problem.
There's been no free lunch in weight loss ever yet.
No,
And I think that people
it's
are
not.
looking at the GLP-1s and thinking, where's the side effect? When's it coming? What's it going to do?
Well, there's tons of side effects. It depends upon the person, because obviously people are very different biologically. Everyone has a different tolerance to alcohol. People have different tolerances to foods, and you're going to have different tolerances to medications. And I have good friends that have had horrible side effects from Ozempic. They tried it, they got on it, it's
What, like-
terrible. Pancreatitis. Yeah, I got a buddy of mine he was in bed for 2 weeks. He was really sick, and I know several other people that just feel terrible when they take it, and they had to get off of it. It was really fucking with them. And then I know other people that have taken it, like a buddy of mine that works at the UFC. We ran into him the other day. I'm like, dude, you look fucking great. And he was like, yeah, I got on Ozempic. Fuck it. I just went for it. I said, hey, man. And he had a whole plan. He's going to get down to a certain weight, and then he's going to taper off.
Transition.
And, but he looked great. He looked great.
You seen Alex Jones?
Yeah, but Alex is not on anything.
I know. So
Yeah, he's
this
not
was
on Ozempic at all. He works with my friend Sean.
on it.
Yeah.
I've been watching him train. Been watching him train on a Tuesday. Not watching him train. He trains when I train. I'm not following Alex Jones around. And he's
Like the story.
getting after it. I know that's exactly what someone from the deep state would say.
Do you know him? Or did you just see him there?
I've spied him over the far side.
You never had a conversation with him?
I once saw him when I did Tim Pool's show in the RV outside of the InfoWars car park. That
Oh
was
yeah,
the-
I did that.
Yeah, it was the same week. That was the
Yeah.
first week I was ever in Austin. It was 3 and a bit years ago. I remember that live stream.
That was fun. Alex is a lovely person. He
He's
really
working.
is.
He's working really hard in the gym.
If
But
he
look,
just had that one thing that he didn't talk about, that's it. It's that one thing. Everything else has been mostly right about.
you know what I should have said? Alex Jones is like the fucking patient zero for if you lose weight by going to the gym and working out and changing your diet, people are just going to say it was Ozempic.
No, people think he's a totally different person. They think they've replaced Alex Jones with someone else.
Is this what did David Icke have a pop at Alex Jones recently?
Did he?
Who did David Icke get in trouble with, Jamie? Was that? I feel like there was it was somebody else in that sort of a world. But yeah, I mean, if the reptile people, like, it gets a bit reptile-y when you get down to the lower body fat percentage.
David Icke, I saw something. He got upset that I've never had him on the show. And it's just the reptile stuff. It's just the shapeshifter stuff. I would still have him on. I think fascinating just to try to pick some of those ideas
But what's
apart
interesting,
or listen to them.
even if you don't believe in the ideas, what's interesting is how does somebody arrive at them.
Right.
That's what's fascinating to me. When I do my show, I speak to someone, I'm like, I want to understand the psychology of how you have arrived at this particular position.
Well, imagine if it's real. I mean, if shapeshifters were real, if there really are evil reptilian aliens, and they've infiltrated our society and they've been pulling the strings forever, and only a couple of people know, how ridiculous would that idea be? How ridiculous? It would be so ridiculous. But is an alien shapeshifter reptile person, is that any weirder than the most recent theory that our entire universe is taking place inside of a black hole that's in another universe? Yeah, there's recent calculations that are leading these, I guess it would be astrophysicists, like who would be studying this, to believe, if you see if you can find it, Jamie. It's the most bizarre headline. Because you're like, what the fuck are you saying? Like, the whole universe is inside of a black hole? New NASA data hints we could be living inside a black hole. Great. Isn't that weirder than reptile people? Because reptile people
Those
is
are the two
like-
choices.
Reptile people's not that weird, right? Like, octopi have the ability to completely transform their appearance and instantaneously adapt to an environment. Why wouldn't we assume to some super advanced species from another planet that we would be horrified if we saw their real face? They just transform and look like the Queen of England.
Yeah, and go sideways like that. Do you know what a Boltzmann brain is? Have you ever heard of this?
No.
Okay, so in an infinite universe, there is only, let's say, the size of your brain. It's like 20 centimeters cubed or something, maybe 30 centimeters cubed. Inside that space, there's only so many ways that you can put matter together so that it creates anything. There's a limited number of ways that matter can come together with different elements, different structures, different everything like that. So Boltzmann brain suggests that across an infinite universe, there will be a brain the exact same as yours, the exact structure as yours, that comes into existence for a moment and then goes away. And the reason that you could be experiencing the world that you are now, all of your memories, your past, your history, the person that you think you are, is that you are a Boltzmann brain that just comes into existence and then goes. Ludwig Boltzmann.
Why do you come into existence and then go away? Why don't you just exist somewhere else?
You could exist somewhere else, but this brain appears just spontaneously because in an infinite universe, there are only so many different ways that you can piece matter together.
Right.
And it means that it's the monkey's typewriter
Yes.
thing. It's the exact same as that, but for the way that matter's constructed. It's basically like a brain in a vat idea, but using infinite physics to kind of explain it.
The way it was explained to me is that if the universe is truly infinite, not only is there another version of you somewhere, but there is another version of you that did the exact same thing you have done every step of the way. Every time you sneezed, every hesitation before you spoke your mind, every time you almost went into traffic when you didn't realize the light was still red, all of those things have happened in the exact same order an infinite number of times, and every possible conceivable variation
That you
in
wore red
between.
instead of blue.
Yep.
That you turned left instead of right.
Yep. Went trans instead of straight. All of it. All of it. That you live in a totalitarian environment, that you live in a utopia, that the Germans won the war, all that. Everything. Everything that could possibly be different would be different in every possible scenario. That's what infinite means.
Mm-hmm.
It means it's so vast. Like the craziest one to me was the concept that inside every galaxy, in the center of every galaxy is a supermassive black hole. And that supermassive black hole is approximately 1/2 of the mass of the entire galaxy. If you go into that supermassive black hole, so there's hundreds of billions of galaxies, right? Inside that supermassive black hole is an entirely another universe filled with all sorts of different galaxies that have supermassive black holes in them. You go into one of those, another universe filled. Supermassive black holes, another universe filled. All supermassive black holes, each one another universe.
It's just a WinZip file all the way
Well, why
down.
is that weirder than the universe is infinite? Why is that weirder? I mean, the weirdness of what it is so fucking insane. The idea that it's infinite, or that there's an infinite multiverses and infinite versions of these things inside black holes and in all sorts of ways that we haven't even really figured out yet. That's not that much weirder than what's real. What's real is insane. What's real is that the whole thing was smaller than the head of a pin, and for no understandable reason, it expanded instantaneously and became the universe that you see in the sky today. Okay. What the fuck are you saying? Like, McKenna had a great line about that science requires of you but one miracle. The Big Bang.
Mm-hmm.
It's a miracle. What is it if it's not that? I mean, it's a thing of science, yes. Okay. So if you could study all of the matter, and you study all of the forces and all the energy and all the reasons why matter coalesces or matter expands, yes, you could probably, given enough time and enough quantum computing power, figure out what's causing everything to compress down smaller than the head of a pin and then explode. But it's still crazy. It's even if you had some scientific explanation for it, it's fucking insane.
I got into supervoids. So there's
yeah.
the Boetes supervoid.
Yeah.
So areas of the universe that have big absences of matter, way more than there should be. And the Boetes supervoid is the biggest one. I think Ton 6118 or something is one of the biggest stars or one of the biggest black holes, and then this Boetes supervoid is because you would expect homogeneity across the universe. Things to be distributed pretty evenly.
No.
So what's this big hole? Here, Jamie, can you try and find a Boetes supervoid
love
thing?
the videos that show you the size of Earth and the size of our sun and the size of other suns.
You realize just how fucking insignificant
You
you
get
are.
to suns that are as big as our galaxy.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah,
I don't know if there's suns that big, but there's definitely suns as big as our solar system.
well, looking at the night sky gives you a really wonderful piece of perspective, right? It reminds you just how puny and insignificant you are.
I think that's a giant problem with our society is that light pollution keeps us from seeing that all the time.
The mysterious hole in the universe that's billions of times larger than the Milky Way. So go one left, list of voids, Jamie. Yeah, that one.
Just big holes.
Yeah. So you should not have, it should be more evenly distributed.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Boetta's void, you know, this huge lack in the middle of, it's so cool.
Imagine you take a left turn in a spaceship. And
Fuck, not here, not the Boetta's super void, not again.
And then
God damn it.
You can't land for 100 million years.
Yeah. Dude, I had Matthew McConaughey on the show toward the back end of last year, and we talked about Interstellar's 10th year anniversary. That show is still, that movie is still my favorite movie of all time.
It's an amazing movie. I just saw it again like a couple of weeks ago.
Me too.
It was incredible. It's so good. It's so weird. Such a weird movie.
Nolan's a fucking king.
He's a wizard.
Everything that he does.
Yep.
What's the new one? What's his new movie that he's in?
The Odyssey, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What is
and
the
it's-
Odyssey?
The Homer.
Oh, God, really? Ooh.
I don't know that story either, so I'm kind of.
Yeah, I don't either.
Part of me knows that I should have read it, and part of
Right.
me is glad that I didn't. So I get to. I don't know how it finishes. I don't know how it ends.
Yeah. I think I probably read it in high school, but I don't remember it at all.